Hello, everybody. This is an after action report for a diplomacy variant. Uh, my name is Really Ugly Bug, and I'm joined by Zach.
Hello.
You want to take it
In
away?
this game, I played the country of Eshil in the Discovery of Icos diplomacy variant by Firebender. This is a very secret variant, as you can probably already see on your screen. This is actually what we call a fog of war variant. So this was the first and only time this map has ever been played. No players knew what the map looked like or even who the other players in the game were at the game start. So this is all I kind of had. There's also some other special rules for this diplomacy variant. So each country actually had its own special power called trait, as well as a victory condition. So instead of the standard diplomacy win condition where you control half the map, each power actually was playing for a special, unique set of win cons, which was revealed at the end of the first winter phase.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Eshel is the red country you see here. Only
hmm
only bit of color in this wasteland. And I didn't actually end up playing in this map. I was just a country spectator for Zach in this one. He just messaged me. I was like, "Oh yeah, I joined the game." It was like
Gave me a ton of advice. Yeah.
it was super secretive. Like you didn't even see like who was making the announcements for the game. It was so interesting.
Yeah, it
Um,
very much had like a Fight Club energy. You don't talk about Icos.
it really did.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is all
But
all
yeah.
he saw at the beginning. This is the first Fog of War variant I've seen played before, which was very exciting.
Yeah. So Bug was like a spectator, basically watching my every move, giving me advice, and making a lot of speculations about the tile borders and who or what could potentially be next to me in any direction.
Yes, easily the most fun game I've spectated in a while.
Yeah. Just some more variant rules before we start getting into the phase-by-phase tactics. Something else that was interesting is if your units would be dislodged by another power. So if you got supported into and you were forced to retreat, it would reveal both of your trait and your victory condition to the power that dislodged you. So that'll end up being very impactful tactically, and I actively avoided to be dislodged more than I would in a usual map to try to keep that information secret. And they also had a rule where if two powers held units right next to each other, just a normal hold, it would share the victory condition and trait both ways. But that almost never happened. Almost all powers were revealed by just conversations between players as well as those dislodges.
Yeah, at
But yeah, so
least
this was the opening position I saw when I first joined the server. Um, what do you think about it, Bug?
I like it. To keep in mind, these are two different images that I've Frankensteined together. So he had two different maps to view at the
Yes.
start. Like the his two spots were not connected whatsoever.
hmm
Um, which I found quite fascinating. And so my mind didn't even know what to expect what the other countries started
hmm
to look
Yeah,
like.
we couldn't talk to anyone. We had basically no information.
Yeah, his was gunboating basically for the first turn. Um, but yeah, I like. Oh yes, you should explain this one. It's the what armies are
Yes.
those
Oh, right.
squares.
I introduced the fact that there were powers. Yeah. So there's two things to talk about from this opening map. The first that you can immediately notice from it being a fog of war variant is units can only see, or you can only see what your units can see. So these squares here represent armies, and the circles represent fleets. So you'll immediately notice that the fleet can see these water tiles around it. Um, but to the left, you see this massive, on the left map next to the fleet, you'll see this massive black blob, which we can presume to be some inland center that isn't on the coast. But because fleets can't move to inland centers, we can't see what that is. So we just can assume that there's some inland blob there. And then on the
Yeah,
right map, we have this army here, and it's surrounded by this black blob to the north, as well as all these land tiles, and we can immediately assume, okay, that's probably sea tile all around that northern side, because otherwise the army would be able to see and move to it. So we immediately know that this right map is on the northeast coast of wherever it is, that there's water wrapping around um, at least the IENC tile.
yeah. And also with this, your country's power actually has an impact on this starting map.
Yes. Yes. So my country had the only thing I knew was my country's power. I did not get the win condition until the end of the first year, at the end of winter. But I did know my power at this point, and I actually had two powers. So I was one of the only countries to have that. The first is the power is called navigation, which was the ability to access what they call deep sea tiles. And these are a special different color from normal sea tiles, that only I could access, or I could also teach other players or give them a gift and allow them to be able to access it. Otherwise, anyone who met me would learn it 3 years after.
Yeah.
So I basically have this like naval advantage, that would allow me to access these special sea tiles. Unfortunately, we can't see any of them to start. The second thing I had was the ability to explore, which is once per phase, I could order a unit. So for example, IENC, to take the explore action instead of a normal diplomacy move or support action. And in doing so, it would find the closest neutral to me that I haven't seen yet. So in this case, it says that IENC is considered to explore before the game starts as part of my power, and I can see where IEGV is, just straight off the start of the game.
Yeah. Which
Yeah.
is, it's quite interesting because, like, obviously, the IEGV is not adjacent to
Yes.
INC.
Exactly. So in a normal, and that was actually one of the questions I had before I even knew what my power was. I immediately was like, why can I see IEGV? That
Yeah.
doesn't make sense to me. Yeah.
And then in your
Am I misunderstanding the rules? Yeah.
power, there's a little footnote. It's like your your country did this right before the game started. Your country
Yeah.
explored right before.
hmm Exactly.
So it is a little bit
Uh,
interesting. You do have that unique bit there.
yeah, which definitely helps a lot with my first move decisions. Although I guess I probably still would have made the same choice.
Yeah, in hindsight, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah,
So
do we want
yeah,
to?
so looking at this opening position, just having to put in spring moves, I don't have a ton of choices here. Really, the main ones are, do I want to send this fleet to ASGY, the sea tile, or do I just want to go immediately to the neutral Aenir? And there's pros and cons to both options. That was probably the biggest decision point this phase. Um, I end up choosing to go to Aenir. And the
Yeah,
reason for that actually was my explore power. Um, I really liked the ability to just walk into the neutral and then be able to have something to do and explore in the fall. If it was a normal map where I didn't have a power, I might have just gone to ASGY or something else to get more vision,
yeah,
but I
or
wouldn't have, because it wouldn't be as valuable to just hold and do nothing in the fall.
yeah, or go up north. Because an interesting part about this map that I noticed when I was looking at this is that the sea tiles are all square. Like the borders between the sea tiles, like right here,
Mhm.
is just a straight line. So I
Yes.
can presume that the straight lines between that are on these borders that you can actually see might be extra sea tiles there.
Yes.
So this more intricate border here, I just assumed to be a coast of
Mhm.
land. So
Yeah.
you could see that the coast wraps all the way down here below Anir and up north as well. So
Mhm.
that could have been an option to go up and see maybe perhaps there's a supply center next to ASLC, but
Yeah. That was a really smart observation that I didn't think about until Bug mentioned it in my void. And yeah, I agree that it would have been a really interesting idea. I think I'm so conservative, I think, in how I take this first approach. I just see this neutral right next to AENE. I assume I probably want that, and I can probably get that in the first
yeah,
year. So
and
I wasn't
it's
really.
it's very safe. Like
Mhm.
I don't blame you there. It's like I probably would have done the same thing. It's like,
Yeah.
is it worth the risk of maybe you go north and there's nothing and
Yeah.
your game's ruined because you only start with one unit on this area. You don't know how far away your other
Right. And if
starting
there is a
area is.
power that's neighboring Aenir, I probably want to be the person who gets it because I
Yeah,
don't want another power sitting there. So. And or the other issue is if I go to ASGY and then another power moves adjacent to Aenir, they could end up bouncing me out of Aenir in the fall.
yeah,
Um, and then moving to the right, image, I literally have only two choices here, which is move to IEKT or move to INGP. This was kind of arbitrary because we know that one's going on the left side of the coast and one's going on the right side of the coast, and we don't really, or at least we presume that it's the left and the right side of the coast because INC doesn't have any other neighbors. INGP just looked to me like it would have more potential connection points than IEKT does. And another minor bonus, I suppose, is that it's not already dyed red. So another power might be hesitant to walk into IEKT because they see that it's dyed red and see it's like, that's maybe a hostile attack. I don't want to do that in year one. So it just allows me to control more space, like, and as part of my country, and that people, when they meet me later, will accept was already part of my border.
Yeah, that makes sense. Color in the map.
Yeah,
Always
exactly.
fun.
Literally color in the map.
Yeah, do we want
Either
to?
way, I just assume the unit is going to go to IEGV in the end.
Yeah, that I think that makes sense. Like there, unless there's a new supply center that shows up out of nowhere, I think IEGV is the safest option.
Yeah, and if there was going to be another supply center, I think it would probably be near INGP because it's like also if I go south to INGP and there's another center immediately south of it, I would very much consider taking that in year one. Whereas if I go east to IEKT and there's another center east of it, I'm not as inclined to take that because it seems much more difficult to secure and reinforce. Whereas this IEGV core, it just seems much easier to have like a unit in INGP that can be next to two different neutrals or something. Maybe that's just because of how the map looks. I don't know, but
Yeah,
it just seems like you can have more of a stable, solid center that way.
I think that is entirely just a visual effect because
It might just be the
IEKT
visual
is
effect of
big.
IEKT, yeah,
Yeah, we had to,
because I think you're right. They should just be the same from what I know of them.
yeah. We want to move in onto the moves.
Yeah, let's move into it.
Yeah,
So yep, I do what we talked about. I think we can kind of go pretty quickly through this just to the next
yeah.
one. Yeah.
And we see new vision.
Yes, so this is what we see. It's around what I guess we would have expected. I don't know. It's hard because I've obviously seen all the maps now that it's hard to know the surprise of what things would have been.
Yeah, something
I think the biggest
interesting
surprise,
is
yes,
the non-active site is we just see that it's all grayed out now that we don't have a unit next to it. We do
yeah,
know that
exactly.
the
So
tiles are still there. They're just not. We can't
yeah,
see
exactly.
what's in it if there
This
is anything.
helps. Yeah, this helps explain the variant has a difference between active site and passive site, like Bug was just saying. So the passive site is this gray. It's basically just on your map, the units will like the positions will still appear, but you can't actually see anything that's going on in them. Is the passive site, and then active site is what your units can immediately see right now, and you could see things like move through them or what have you,
Yeah,
which will become very relevant later because you're not going to be able to keep units everywhere you'd want to have sight of everything that you have taken even.
yeah. Like there could be like a unit, so you're a pretty big empire, but you've got like a hole in it. There could be a unit that just slips through, and you don't even
Hmm.
know.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Um, and
But
way later on, well, in general, I'm kind of making sight a priority, but this early on, it's just exploration, really.
yeah,
Uh, you certainly can't have units in defensive positions this early.
but the interesting thing this turn, there's another supply center next to
Yeah,
ANIR.
that was a surprise.
Yeah, I think that was as well for me. It's like, oh, now you got a decision to make. You explore or try to grab it.
Mhm. What decision do you think you would make here?
Grab it.
Yeah.
I don't see a reason to explore when you already know that there's two supply centers there.
Hmm.
You're not lacking options.
Yeah. You would get more information from exploring, but you'd also get more information from moving.
Yeah, you'd figure out what's on this coast down below as well.
Mhm.
Maybe it's a fourth supply center. Maybe you bounce someone out.
Can you imagine? Um, yeah, exactly. So I do end up, I think, choosing to move this phase. I think those are basically the two options there is explore and move.
Yeah,
And then the right move is even more simple to choose. It's just to move into IEGV. Um, it's a bit interesting that INVG was here. I mean, we certainly expected a land tile to be there. The only other thing I probably would have expected, the only other question it would have been is INVG what it is, or was it split into two tiles potentially? It could have been, but it
Yeah,
was not. Uh, yeah, so pretty straightforward decisions for this phase. I think we can probably just go on. I don't
yeah.
think there's much
Good
else to talk about.
moves.
Yeah.
And whoa, suddenly
Whoa.
some interesting stuff.
Hmm.
Two new
Yeah.
colors to this
Two new
darkness.
colors, not red.
Yeah. One of them we only see this yellow. We only
Hmm.
see the tile that's been colored in. We don't actually see a
And
unit.
someone probably moved in there and then moved out, probably.
Yeah.
And we can even speculate it was probably an army because this is a coastal tile and we would probably see the sea unit if it was there.
Yeah. Unless it followed the coast.
Yeah. I also think I thought at the time it might have also just been a spawn color tile,
Yeah, like
like
IKT.
IEKT was. Um, yeah, could have been either of those, either an army that moved through or a spawn color tile.
But this didn't open press with this player now, right?
It did not. I
'Cause-
believe in order to open press, the way it worked was you'd have to have either two units see each other, in which case the press channel would automatically open, or one of your units sees one of their units, but they don't see you, in which case you could choose whether or not you wanted to open the press channel.
yeah,
But at this point, we could not open a press channel.
gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense because I remember this power opening, but had no
Yes.
communications with them.
And I certainly would have chosen to. I know there's actually various different philosophies by different players that we found out by the end of the game in terms of a lot of people actually withheld opening press channels, especially this early on. I want to talk to anyone I can. And I know different players have very different playstyles with this, but yeah, I want information. I want to start building alliances earlier than other players. I very much in press had a very like I'll share everything if you share everything, like to an equal extent approach. Just wanted to get allies, wanted to get as much information as possible.
Yeah, I mean, and it's necessary. You can hardly see anything.
Yeah.
But yes, there's this country, which
Yes.
it's interesting to note here. This is the fall turn. They did not move into a supply center.
Correct.
They were just moving to presumably explore, I think.
That would make sense. It seems like they're, from what I can tell, at least at this point, it seems like they're in the middle of a land tile that's adjacent to potentially multiple other land tiles. So
Yeah.
they seem like they're somewhere central in the continent. I would not think it's a coastal tile.
Yeah. But let's move on to the clean map. But
Yes.
how how did initial press go with that
Yeah,
country?
so very friendly. We started sharing things. One thing that they had told me was that they had met a green country as well as me. So they had met two other countries. I believe initially they described themselves as there was a lot of conversations early on about what our continent looked like on the right, and like which regionals were on the continent, like which directions they were in. With them specifically, they kind of were at various times thought to be either like a central regional power on a map that had five regional powers on it. So you can imagine like if you just imagine like a square continent or something, there would be me on as the northern power. There was who we'll later find to be teal as the left side of the power, and then there was some thought that either like this orange Douglar was either like a central in the middle of the continent, or they were either on the right or the south side, at least relative to me.
Oh
That's
yeah,
kind of
the country's name is Douglar. That is something
yes.
that
The orange country's name is Douglar.
yes, we'll probably end up calling it Douglar because this is one of the names I do remember quite well.
Yeah, we'll probably use mostly country names or color names
Yeah,
to refer to people.
but yeah,
Um,
this that was
yeah.
very interesting. Seeing a country.
But
Um,
yes, they talk about meeting this green power. I don't recall exactly how much they had shared about them at this point, but I'm starting to think I'm part of a regional triple with this green power and Douglar.
yeah. I think that's true. And you got two builds here. Did you?
Yes, I have two builds here, which is probably the most interesting decision of the game so far in terms of tactics. The problem is I have so little information going into it that it's hard to say that any direct decision is correct or incorrect here in terms of what to build. Um,
Yeah, I think instinctually what I do is probably what you ended up doing, which
mhm.
is fleet IE and key, IE and C up here, and then an army here just to get the vision on the middle.
Yeah, exactly. That was exactly what I was thinking for exploration reasons. I just wanted to see what the opposite like the opposite tiles were around me. So for IENC, I wanted to see what the sea tiles look like around me, and then for yeah, I wanted to see what the inland tiles, especially if I'm going to control this 3 neutral core on the left side that I really want to end up controlling. I want to be able to see what the inland geography is like, and also ensure that no armies make it into there.
Yeah. Also, just to see everything around your home supply centers.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yep, you did build army and fleet right there.
Yes. And then we see a lot. Oh,
I think
look
this
at
is
that.
when you start thinking about that triple that you're talking about, the regional triple.
Yeah, the three-way regional. So I meet teal here. And just to note, there was a distinct green from teal that both end up being that Duglar talks about a lot, and they end up being relevant. Green they talk about as coming from an eastern continent, and I don't believe yet potentially, but soon they'll talk about having been attacked by green from an eastern continent, and that they're like this eastern regional. And then we have this teal down to our left, this western regional that we also see as actually being on our continent as part of this regional triangle.
And all the information is about this side of the map. We have no idea where this is.
Yeah, we
Like
have no idea where that is exactly.
it very confusing. But
I do meet Praia as the name of this teal country at this point, so I am talking to them, and I believe they tell me that they are south of yellow. So that's when I start. I don't know if that's immediately or when that happens, but this is when I'm starting to get an idea of how my maps might connect.
yeah, you might these two spots might be closer than you might expect.
Exactly. Because originally I thought these were far-flung colonies that
Yeah,
were not near each other at
I
all.
tried to like put this map in the top left of this one to see if that coastline matched. It really didn't.
Mhm.
It's like I was really struggling to figure out where you were in relation
Oh,
to that.
something else that's important here during the winter phase. This is when I learned what my win condition is.
Oh
So
yeah.
at the beginning of the winter phase, I was actually offered a vote choice, as were some other players, to vote between two options that didn't really have a lot of information. I believe mine were called Embrace Our Overlords and Down with the Colonists. So a bit of my country's lore is that I was a colony of a colonist nation, and it seems like in general in this game or this world there were several colonist like human nations, and then a bunch of like monster nations that were the various regionals populating the maps, like dwarves, mermaids, elves, etc. Um, and I knew, and so I knew that my from my lore it would have some relation to whatever this colonist country was that originally uh, colonized my country. So when I had this win condition choice between Embrace Our Overlords or Down with the Colonists, the only thing I could really guess was like, okay, one of this is probably friendly to that power, and one of this is anti this power. And I was guessing it would be something like ally with the power or eliminate them. And just knowing my playstyle and also thinking it'd be more fun and interesting, I went for the alliance route. So I end up choosing Embrace Our Overlords as my win condition. And
Yeah.
at the end of the winter, it's revealed to me what precisely that means, which ends up being I will win the game if I own 12 centers on Aquilia or Icos. And I will also need to own 6 centers on Warfuria or have Tuthu own 12 centers on Warfuria. So at this point, I don't really know a whole lot of what that means.
Yeah. That's
I
a
know
lot
that that
of
means that
new
there are
names.
continents. Yeah, that's a lot of names. I know that there's continents now that are named Aquilia, Icos, and Warfuria. I know there's another power named Tuthu, and I need them to do well.
And you know that the
That's kind of what
game
I
is
know at this
called
point.
Discovery of Icos. So it's like,
Yes, the game is called Discovery of Icos, so I was able to piece together, okay, Icos um, is a continent and I need to do well on it. And I think I started to learn around this time as well that the first letter of the tile name refers to the continent. So we'll now see
Yeah.
on the right is the Icos continent with all the tiles of the I,
Yeah.
and on the left is the Aquilia continent with all the tiles of the A. And it made sense. Okay, I need to get 12 centers combined in these two continents. I still don't necessarily know where they are relative to each other, but
Yeah. Did you
and
figure
then
out
there's
what
this.
the second letter meant at this point as well? Or was that a little bit later?
We figured that out at some point. I think it doesn't end up being super relevant to the game
Yeah.
ultimately. I don't remember precisely when that was found out, but yeah, there was some just like trying to figure out what and then the last two are just like the tile's name basically.
Yeah.
I believe the second letter is what nation the tile was in. Um, so like Eshil is the E. That's why all my home centers have Eshil in it.
It's interesting. IE GV. That's actually a
Mhm.
neutral. Should be N. Unless there's a lore reason for that.
It's a lore thing. I believe if there's like an actual something this was based on. I don't remember everything about it, but yeah,
I think it's based off a D&D campaign, is it
that
not?
sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
But I wanted to mention something. Your
mhm.
country was Eshil the Lost was the little descriptor.
Yes, the Lost.
Saying that it was 5 years or like several years ago,
Mhm.
5 fleets sailed off to a colony and we lost and we lost contact from the people who sent us out here.
Yeah, exactly.
They've
We were
abandoned
shipwrecked
us.
colonists. Yeah. So, do you want to get revenge and go kill them, or do you want to, the
Join
idea
their
was like
fold or
accept it,
whatever.
and it wasn't their fault. They wanted to help us. Like, yeah,
Fun lore stuff.
yes, fun lore stuff exactly.
But
But it
another
ends up
country
being very
name.
relevant to
Yeah.
the victory condition. Yeah.
Yeah. Tuthu. You gotta work with Tuthu.
Yes. So the other thing, and I'm being subtle about this because I don't want everyone to know my win condition, of course, but I want to find out everything I can about Werfuria, and I want to find out everything I can about Tuthu. Because in order to win the game, I need to get to Werfuria, it seems like, and I
Yeah.
need Tuthu to do well. So that's what my international press is starting to focus on.
And so
Um,
far, you know nothing about Refuria. I remember
so far, I
correctly.
know nothing about Werfuria.
No luck.
Exactly. Um,
Yeah. Do we want to move on to the moves, or should we try to figure out what
I
would you
think we
do
can
here?
talk a little bit about what you would. Yeah, you can talk a bit about what you would do here. It's hard to talk about what I would do because I think a lot of it just ends up being what I did do. Because again, at this point, I don't have a lot of press context.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think generally I'd say move towards the units that you
Mhm.
can see. Um,
Yeah,
but you do have that explore ability that is very nice. Um,
yeah.
I'm not really sure. I think the moves are. The thing is I know what happens.
I actually don't remember what happens here, so I can guess at what I would do.
Yeah,
I think I would definitely send IENC to ISKR here. I want to find out what's there, but I also can't let them walk into my home center, and that's really the
yeah.
only way
You
to
can't walk
move
into,
that way.
can't move north, otherwise they could
Um,
dot you.
IEGV, I would also want to move into INWW. I believe I proposed this to Duglar, but they didn't like it. So I either end up, I don't think I'd do it anyways because I was like really getting on with them. But I might just explore here. But if they give me permission, I would love to walk there. But I
Yeah,
believe they said it was next to one of their home centers, so I'm thinking, oh, okay. Um, which makes sense because it was year one. Another thing that I'm kind of doing at this point is tracking where people must have been because they met me in year one. So for example, I know that Priya got a fleet into ISKR by the end of year one. So I know that 2 moves away from that fleet must be wherever it spawned or wherever their home center is. So that makes it very limited in terms of where Priya's closest home center could actually be.
yeah. They traveled
Um,
far,
yeah.
quite early.
In terms of the left side map, also I wasn't thinking about this at the time, but now that you mention it, it also would have been interesting to note. I now know also that Priya did not get, um, at least they didn't take builds with all their units in the first year either, because
Yeah.
Iskara wasn't in a build.
Same
That wasn't
with
something I was thinking
Duglar.
about. Yeah.
Like,
I did think about it with Duglar, I guess because I didn't meet Priya until after the winter. It just wasn't something that had crossed my mind. But that's something really interesting to note. So I should be in a pretty good spot here. Although I don't even know how many centers people started on. I only started on 2, but they could have started on more than that or less than that. Well, probably not less than that. Um,
yeah,
the other thing is, so looking at this left continent, I think there's a few options here as well. I like sending the fleet out to the water. That gives a lot of vision. Uh, I kind of like sending the army into AAR or ANEV. Both give vision and secure the neutral in the fall. I don't remember what I actually did.
Oh, you want to see?
I think I sent to ANEV, and I think in retrospect it's arguably a mistake, but I still like getting the vision there, so maybe it wasn't. It's always hard with these low information decisions. The reason I'm saying it might be a mistake, and I think this ends up being relevant,
It's
is
because it is.
yeah, if NA goes to ANIR here, it's defensively beneficial if someone was to walk into ANOH.
um,
Yeah. Yeah, okay, I do get
which
typically
happens.
punished this way. Yes. And actually, I think this is a big mistake by me in general. I knew that it was very possible that an army had moved through a UOP. So I should have been thinking, oh, there's an army that moved through AUOP. It's probably still adjacent to NOH. So this could, I don't know. I just wasn't considering this as a possibility. I think one of my biggest problems, and a lot of diplomacy players have this, is they only kind of think about the board the way that they would do something. And I would never go for a year one fog stab on someone before meeting them. Um, so I was just like, I don't know, like it's probably fine. I don't know. I just wasn't even considering this as a possibility when I really should have been. But it happens. And I
Yeah,
would much rather have that army in Ainir right now because I'd be able to support myself back into NOH as well as get the Ainir neutral. But now I have some very awkward decisions to make.
there is one plus about the fact you moved to a Nev
Hmm.
is that you got to
There is.
see ANVE.
Correct. I got to see ANV, and I also see that it is one of my cores, which is very helpful because I currently only have two of them. So
Yeah. Also, there is a map error. You're not supposed to see A and JE, but
correct.
there's quite a bit of those. Like A, I don't know. You can see A as BP here as well, but
Oh yeah, that's also an error. Yep. Um,
I think I mentioned these to the GM before
yeah, a lot
you
of the times
saw them.
we would correct things. Yeah. Yeah, it's a hard map to do.
Yeah, I don't blame him, but
One thing that's not a map error that you can see here is IDJK,
yes,
I believe. And that was because it was my first explore, because I do actually explore in IGV here. And
yeah,
I can see that that is the home center that they told me about. I'm not very surprised, but it is cool to see.
yeah. It's the closest supply center to that. I think it also prioritizes uh, countries you haven't met before as well.
There's a bunch of things about how it's supposed to prioritize. It ended up, I believe the GMs ended up ignoring that eventually and just saying it chooses randomly amongst the closest tiles.
All
Yeah,
right.
because there was a whole, we can talk about this later when we get to a specific phase, but there's basically there was supposed to be a specific like set of priority rules that the Explorer followed, which I was using to be able to map out some really interesting things. I think it was something like it would choose neutrals that were unclaimed first, and then it would choose um, powers that you haven't met before, and then it would choose powers that you have met before, or something like that. And I was using this to retroactively go back and be like, okay, was that neutral claimed at the time that I had explored it? No, because otherwise it wouldn't have been shown to me before this other tile that was equidistant. And then like, oh, I saw this tile, which must have been controlled by this person at this time. Otherwise, it would have showed me this because of the way that things ended up lining up.
Well, I think
Um,
it only really would show you that it's owned by a country because it's their home supply center. Its court is theirs. So if it's a neutral, it doesn't
yeah, I'm not
really.
referring to this specific neutral. There's another neutral coming up that I was able to map out who should have controlled it every year based on the fact that it hadn't been shown to
Oh,
me
was it
via
supposed to
explores.
tell you the country if like they?
No, just from the fact that I would know um, whether or not it was unclaimed or whether or not it was a power that I'd met before or something like that. I forget the exact line of logic. We can get to it in that phase if we want to. I have the whole thread saved.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, another huge thing about this turn is that the two maps are combined now.
Yes, that is really big. I don't. Yeah, okay, because ASGY. That's why. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is the other benefit of moving to ASGY. You are close. So your
I
fleet.
don't regret the ASGY move. I think moving the army into Anir was probably better. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
In hindsight, yes.
Yeah.
But it wasn't
Yeah.
without its upsides.
No, it wasn't. I don't think it's a terrible move. I just think it's probably a mistake. And the only reason is because again, I saw that AU OP tile colored in, so I could have inferred that there was an army. Um,
Yeah.
So it's not just using hindsight, it's using some foresight that I wasn't
But
really paying attention
but
to.
yes, you actually get to talk to this yellow country as well. So much
I
stuff
do.
happened this turn. Like so
Right
much.
after the yeah, right after they stabbed me.
We should look at the
I'm
moves
immediately
actually. Something
yes.
important. You moved to ISKR and they moved out,
Mhm.
but
But they get bounced.
they get bounced. So
Yes.
you don't actually get to have the two fleets on that new supply center that you see of the person that just stabbed you.
Correct. Um, and because I don't have two fleets, I'm immediately going to Teal and saying, "Hey, you want a supply center? I'll give you a supply center." Because again, make allies. I was just stabbed by yellow. And if this is going to become like a three-way, like three local powers, teal, yellow, red, then I of course want to get teal on side, and offering them a center seems a very good way to do that.
It wasn't I think I remember this. Wasn't when you first met the person, met Yellow, which is
Mhm.
Usneji? I don't know how to pronounce it.
Usneji, yeah.
Usneji, yeah. Um, didn't they like sub out really early on?
They sub out really early. They haven't subbed out at this point. I think they sub out like the end of this year or something, or
Okay,
maybe next year. But
yeah.
yeah, it's very early on.
Because
It's not.
I
They don't get past
remember
the
I
full year.
remember the first message they said he was like, "Oh, this is Zach."
I think the first thing they said is, "I hope I hoped I had stabbed a worse player at diplomacy."
Which is hilarious.
And then I
And
immediately went into, "It's not too late to take it back." Because I really wanted them to take the step back,
yeah, it is.
and
It's
walk
a
out of
spring stab. So
ANOH. Yeah, exactly. They could walk out of ANOH. I'd be very happy. Um,
yeah, and you stay a bit stronger. But yeah, that
I mean, if I'm getting these 4 centers up here and they're leaving ANOH at home, I am very happy with them. Um,
yeah, I don't
yeah,
remember if they did that or not though.
I asked them to. Did they do it? I'll see.
Yeah,
In terms of tactics this phase, I have a few options. I don't think I ever force ANOH here. I think it just makes sense to take Aenir because if I force ANOH, then they'll just have a retreat into Aenir, and that gets them even closer to my home center, which I don't like. And they can probably support units into ANOH because they'll have more units coming from where the previous units were. So it kind of just made sense to get into Aenir here and hope they vacate. Um,
do you
I
get in
believe I
there with the
even
fleet or
Yeah, I think I want to play greedy here and take Envy as well. That's kind of a debate. You could just support myself into Aenir with the fleet. But then that also gives up fleet positioning. I think I end up saying I'm going to use my fleet for. Actually, I don't. Now I'm thinking about what I did. I think I support Praya into AUYK, which also makes sense because I want to get Praya on side with me, and I think that's more valuable than even potentially taking Aenir. I think there's also oh yeah, this is the other thing I was thinking about, is that if I go for Aenir with the fleet, it's very likely that yellow just ends up bouncing me if they're committing to the stab. So they move to Aenir, I move to Aenir, they bounce me, they take my center, and I don't even get the neutral out of it. So I think I was thinking because them moving to Aenir is fairly likely here, I'll just let them do that. I'll take Envy and I'll support Praya into AUYK. I think that's what I end up settling on. There's a lot of different options here, and a lot of them are valid as well. So obviously, supporting myself into Aenir could be very solid. But I like the idea of giving Praya a reason to work with me. And also, not even just that, it would let me get my fleet out to ISKR, which would open myself up for builds and probably allow for more follow-up attacks on yellow. So I really like this idea of getting Praya into AUYK here.
yeah,
In terms of the Icos map, I think I'm just exploring again. And until Duglar lets me go to INWW, this position is very static.
yeah, yeah, or just
Yeah.
like leaves it open.
Yeah, did you have any thoughts about those various options, Bug? Like what do you think you would do here?
I want to see INWW not have a unit in it
Yeah.
next turn. I'm
Mhm.
not really happy about it because if they don't have
I
it
think
out,
I
if
might have been pushing them to move out in fall because I'm not taking a center here, so it's like a safer time to move out.
yeah, because then you
Uh,
can move to IEKT and explore over there too. Like if even if
yes.
you don't want to move to INWW to piss them off,
Mhm.
still get some vision.
Yeah, I also want to start making my way south because I know that like Praya is there, so if they want to help me in a war with Praya, or whatever have you, like then they want me in the south. But very much they didn't really care for me to move anywhere. So I don't mind because I have to have one unit exploring. So it doesn't seem like the end of the world for me to just
Yeah,
sit in
because you can
IEG.
have a max of one explorer per phase,
Yes. hmm So
which
this one's just going to be on explore duty. And I was very fine with that at the time. I think in retrospect, as the game ages, I become less and less of a fan of my own power. And I think in retrospect, exploring is not a very strong ability and potentially should have just moved around and not explored. Because you'll notice, like, had I moved into INWW, for example, I would get vision of IDJK as well as several other tiles. So there's a lot of cases where one move reveals multiple tiles, in addition to being able to take centers and be active and do a lot of other things. So much so that ordering a unit to explore is situationally useful, but oftentimes not the best thing to be doing.
yeah, in this situation they didn't move out of INWW, so exploring was
So yeah.
pretty solid.
Actually, I think we do see them move, but they get bounced. No, they support hold. Never
Yeah,
mind.
they support held you for some
Yeah.
reason.
The reason is they didn't want to hold next to me so that we didn't reveal each other's abilities.
Ah, yes. I see.
Yes.
Interesting. Yeah, we should we look at the next moves here?
Yeah, we can.
Ah,
Okay,
yes,
so
I remember
I do
this.
go to end there. They don't move into AAR, which is disappointing. Um,
Yeah.
oh yes, there's one big. It's kind of hard to see because it's red on red, but thing I had not been mentioning. Yeah, what is that?
It's a
You might ask.
pentagram.
I know exactly what that is. That actually reminds me, there's something I had been talking about in this fall phase that we had not been talking too much about, which is Snagey and I had some good conversations. I was hoping to get a successful piece out from the Fog Stab. I think this is one of the best times for them to do so. And we talk a bit about abilities. They tell me that their ability needs tile names, and they're constantly asking me for tile names. And they also say it has to be tile names that they have not seen. Uh, and we're having a good conversation. I say, oh, that's probably a good combination with my ability because my ability, allows me to find information. I don't tell them a ton of information. I just say, yeah, it helps me like learn things about the map, like scout and stuff. Um, and they basically say that their ability will make a tile impassable. And I'm like, great. And I start giving them tile names. Specifically, I think I give them like INWW as well as a tile that's to the right of INWW that Douglar tells me about. And the idea here is I want to make the tiles impassable between me and Douglar to make us stabbing each other like basically impossible or less likely, and then we can potentially go in on Praya together later. Because I had a really good relationship with Douglar at this point, Praya seemed to be getting off to a good start, and apparently had already stabbed Douglar. So I think it was something like that, and I had a preference for that. And also I think because the water tiles on the left, it would be hard to have a similar setup with Praya. But yeah, so I'm pitching these. Yellow doesn't end up taking them. Instead, yellow nukes INC. And this tells me a lot of things. First of all, I know that
Yeah.
Praya is the only power that has been adjacent to IENC the entire game, which
Yeah.
means I know immediately that Praya was the one who told Yellow to nuke me there.
Yeah.
Second of all, Yellow's nuking me and stabbing me again for the second time now. And I get nuked for the first time, and this is going to have very significant impacts on the entire rest of my game.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah,
the most, besides maybe the
probably.
spring stab,
Yeah,
but
yeah. Yeah, so what does this mean that my tile is nuked? And you could potentially go to the next phase if you
yeah.
want to. Um, this means that the tile is impassable. This means that any unit that immediately moves into there will be disbanded. Um, and this means I cannot build there, which is very significant because this is one of my only 3 cores. So I can now only have 2 cores for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Oh, and very notably, and this is probably why Praya pitched this, it's my only core on Icos. So I can now never build an army on Icos. I can never build a fleet up there. Um, and this has very significant implications in terms of what powers I can ally with and which powers I have to fight. Um, in general, this is probably a massive mistake from Usniji, and that they later learned that. Obviously, it's pretty hard to potentially know, just like from nuking a random tile. But because my only cores now are in Aquilia, it makes me very heavily invested in winning Aquilia. And I can't invest units into Icos. So if I wanted to invest units away from Usniji, it's really hard for me to. And at this point, they've stabbed me twice, and
Yeah.
it seems like we're probably not going to be working together.
So quite a smart play by Praya there, just to
Yes,
set up a fight between you and a Sneegee, basically forcing a
exactly.
Sneegee to
We're
be focused on you instead of them.
exactly. And me on Usniji. I think because a lot of what I was pitching to Usniji was like, because Praya had also stabbed Usniji, I think earlier, or they were having a lot of conflict because there were sea tiles between the two of them, which we can kind of see, like imagine to the west of Iskar, or we now know where um, Praya's home centers are. Apparently they were having some like squabbles in the sea tiles, like this bounce that had just happened in the spring, where they couldn't move Iskar out. And obviously, Pry also just accepted support into AUYK. And I was like, hey, like, you stabbed me, so I was going to support them into the center. But like, I'm still very open to working with you against Praya. But in this nuking, Usniji is basically shutting down opportunity. I can never build fleets in IENC. I don't even have the fleet that was in IENC, and it's very
Yeah.
difficult for me to get fleets now in to attack Praya.
Important bit, you still do have that supply center. It's still yours.
Yes, yes, I still own it. It's still part of my center count.
So you do have a build this winter,
I do,
which is
I
very
believe.
good. And probably really bad for
In fact, I'm even
Usniji.
+2 this winter because I just had a unit get disbanded, I believe.
No,
I'm now on.
you lost ANOR. So or
Oh,
ANOH.
you're right. You're
So
right. So I'm only on 4 centers and 3 units. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. So I only have one
you
build.
only
Yeah.
have a build because it got disbanded. So this actually screwed Usniji more than you would expect.
Oh yeah, because it just moves a unit from IENC over to Aquilia. Yeah. So it's really bad for Snooji. Um,
Yeah, which I imagine will be an army. Um,
yeah, I think so
because I don't
because I
think a
have this naval
fleet.
control and I can't really get to ASGY, so there's not a lot of reason to build a fleet in ANE here.
Yeah.
It also lets me support into ANEV, which I like as well. So I think this is a very obvious army build. Let me see. Is there anything else that happened during this phase? Yes.
The support into AUYK did not work.
AUYK.
You see this attack?
Yes, it did not work, correct. Which means it was probably support held because it could not have been cut.
Yeah.
Which means I know that because AUOP is open, it's probably to the south of AUYK. There's something support holding it from there.
Yeah.
Something else that's interesting I did not mention in the fall phase as well. I met, I believe in fall retreats, I met Snoo for the first time. So this is my 4th power. Um,
Well, you didn't meet
uh,
them. They met you.
they met me. This is true. I have no idea where they are. Actually, I do, which is that this is army move to Anve. They have a fleet off that coast there.
Yeah.
And that's how they met me. They chose to open the press channel with me.
Yeah.
They say that I'm the second person they've met this game. They're very press active and communicative. They say that they're a regional up to the north west of me, and they seem to have a lot of information about the map. They're also a naval, like a naval country, and they've been talking to a lot of people and like seen a lot Well, actually, not a lot of people because they've only talking to 2 people at this point, but they've seen a lot of the map that I have not seen. So I'm asking for a lot of information. And we start to have a very good relationship. And just throughout the game, they're going to share a lot of things about the map as a whole that I don't end up knowing otherwise.
Yeah. Super
Yeah. And then
useful.
I also have a note that around this time, I know that Douglar is getting attacked by Praya as well as a green power from an eastern continent. So I know that Douglar now is on the east coast of our continent, and they're getting invaded by a country apparently from the continent to the east of them.
And they ended up moving out as well. I think
Yes.
those previous maps where you could see where they end up moving to and whatnot was not actually supposed to be shown to you. So
Yeah, there was some ambiguity and some changes around how the active site actually ended up working.
yeah. So
Um,
that army's gone now, which is nice.
Yes, very nice. I think this was all agreed. They just didn't want me to follow them, so I agreed to do that, and I just explored instead.
Yeah.
In retrospect, that might have been a mistake. It's hard because obviously you want to have a good relationship with them, but it probably would have been better for both of us if I had actually moved south and started getting involved here, but I did not.
Yeah. Also, it's
Um,
not like you can build in this continent anymore. So but that
yeah,
army
that's
is
also why
basically
I
just
was
on.
very happy to just defend this northern section of 2 dots. I didn't really see myself making this a huge expansion area.
Also,
And I also didn't want to annoy Praya by going south and then helping Douglar against Praya, because Praya has a lot of implications for me with Usniji right now.
I remember as well. You had to like experiment a little bit with these impassable tiles to figure out how they
Yes.
fully work. So we know how it works now, but
Yes.
as far as we were concerned, was like this. You can't even move into it. Like that's not even an option.
Yes. Yeah, that exactly. I knew it was impassable and I knew it destroyed the unit that was nuked in there. I didn't know if you even could order a move in there, if you could order a build in there. Eventually, later in the game, I will order a build in there just because I had an extra build and it does instantly disband. This is all stuff that I learned later.
Yeah,
Um, Something that's also important is around this time. Yeah, we're just treating these as invulnerable tiles. So I can never build there, but also no one can ever take it, was kind of the thought of how these work.
yeah. Should we move on to the?
Yeah, I think we can move on.
Yeah. That's I think just clean map retreats or something. Oh wait,
Uh,
that's winter. See, you build an army in
yep, I built an army. We're not surprised. Yes, and then we have our spring moves. This is also not particularly surprising. Yeah, I just support myself into Aenir. Uh,
explore on Icos.
yeah, Ijiv is just going to explore for the immediate future.
Yeah,
I don't want to bother Praya because again, I want their help against Usniji, and I don't want to. From my understanding, Praya is winning, especially because his green power is helping against Duglar. So I don't want to help Duglar die any quicker, because then if only Praya is south of me, for example, then Praya is heavily incentivized to come north against me, especially if it's Praya and this Eastern continent power that can probably wrap around against me. So I'm kind of fine leaving things as they are, um, and just exploring constantly and trying to get some vision that way. Um,
yeah. I'm not really sure what these fleets are doing move wise. I think they're moving
I'm not
somewhere off the
either. I think they're
screen.
moving somewhere out of our vision. Although it seems weird because it seems like something else is moving into
Yeah,
IUYK. So maybe there's maybe what it was is actually IUYK shuffles to the left out of sight, and then another fleet goes to IUYK. That would be my guess. So something like a C tile moves to IUYK.
or
Um,
they bounce somewhere.
yeah,
Uh,
regardless, everything ends up bouncing some way.
yeah,
I believe, or
yeah,
maybe it actually goes through and I can't tell. But the reason I think it bounces is because
nothing
Iskar
in.
also doesn't end up going anywhere. Uh,
Yeah, bit odd.
a bit odd indeed.
But you do have three on ANOH now.
I do. I'm pretty happy with how this phase went. Um, I think I was debating between supporting into Aenir and supporting into Anev, and it's kind of just actually no, I think I had to support into Aenir. And I think because of that, yeah, I think Yellow had a lot of better movesets here if they were going entirely against me, but I think they were also dealing with Praya at the time. So for example, they could have bounced Anev here, and that would mean I wouldn't have as much pressure on H, or also they could have tapped ASGY and Aenir, and that would have made it so I would have had to support in my fleet. But that leaves them very um, in danger of Praya if they send their
Yeah,
fleet north into ASGY.
and I think
Um,
the substitute happened at the has already happened at this point,
yeah, the
and
substitute probably has happened at this point.
and peace talks did not happen. Safe to
These
say.
talks are definitely falling through. I'm trying every phase at this point still. This is what, spring 3? Yeah, I'm still trying. I will give up by next year, but I'm still trying at this point.
Yeah.
Um, it's very much you can walk out of ANOH. I think one of the deals I pitched at this point was something like, I'm trying to remember. I think it's very much just like at this point, like I'm going to take ANOH back, but then we can be at peace again. Is kind of the general thing. Like I know you have Pride to deal with. Like we don't need to do this to the death. But also knowing in my head that that's much less likely now that this INC nuke has happened.
Yeah.
Um, cool. We're
Tribe.
now in this fall phase. Yeah, we support into ANOH. Um,
Yep.
not a
The
whole lot of surprises here.
Raya moves out, it seems.
Private successfully moves out. Yeah, it seems like they're moving to their coast. It's interesting here. It seems like we're getting information about where they're moving, which we probably shouldn't be getting. I don't know. Again, the fog of war rules go back and forth in terms of what
It's a little bit
actually.
vague on how consistent things are, but generally generally it's fog of war.
Yeah, exactly. And for the most part, it's fog of war, exactly like you said.
Yeah.
Um, like I still wouldn't call it not fog of war. It's just different in terms of what you can actually see.
But you do get
Um,
into Usneji.
we do. Yes, we get
You,
into
you
ANOH, which I'm very happy about. I was
and
worried they would get support held.
you dislodge
Uh,
them. You get the
I did dislodge them. This is where I learned their trait and their victory condition this fall.
Yeah.
And so I've been being typical friendly, like just trying to like find a piece. And this is what 3-4 phases now where I've just gotten stabbed and it hasn't worked out. So at this point, I take a more like threatening approach, which unfortunately also doesn't work. Because this fall retreats is really the last time I'm like, hey, we could potentially work together here. Um, so I go to them. This retreat is really their last chance. They have aggressive retreats against me, which is retreating into NJ or NK, or they could just take the army off. And I know they're going to have a disband anyway this winter because I just took a center off of them. And I believe Praya also just took a center off of them or something, or at least they're not getting a center this year.
Yeah. I think Snoo, which you gotta kind of forgot about that country for a second because we can't see him. But
Yeah, we're having a lot of conversations with Snoo. Snoo is invading yellow from the west right now.
yeah,
I
so
just can't see any of their
they're on
units.
that western coast that we can't really see
Exactly,
at
like
all.
past NJ.
Yeah. So
Um,
I think there is a lot of talks on you trying to get them to fight
yeah,
the Snooji here.
yes, exactly. I'm feeling much more comfortable about Snoo at this point. Like the plan is uh, kill Snooji with Snoo and then kill Praya with Snoo is kind of the plan. Because I thought that Praya was in this very dominant position over Duglar. Um, Unfortunately, yeah, so I have this really long conversation with Snooji this phase. Um, if the arm like and I'm basically because I think there is an opportunity for peace here, which is that I'm getting 2 builds. If we're not working together, I can put down 2 armies. I'm guaranteed to hold everything. Usniji is never taking a center off of me, right? And I basically tell it to them. I want to build 2 fleets here because I don't trust Praya, because of the nuke and because it seems like Snoo and Praya are getting powerful, and I don't want to lose this entire control of south and east of Usniji's coastline because I could lose access to a lot of those builds in the long term if I'm entirely landlocked. So I really like being able to build the fleets here.
And also,
But
like
mhm.
having Snoo at the north as well. You want at least something. You want to be able to see him.
Yeah, exactly, because I can't even see what's next to Anve, and I'm just like leaving that completely exposed. That won't come to bite me. Um, so yeah, I really want to be able to build fleets here. And I basically like I'm moving from friendly to also like threatening because I'm like, hey, like basically this is your last chance or we're gonna death war, like, and you're gonna go down to 0 centers. I have your trait and victory condition. I can tell that to everyone I meet. Like you have 0 chance of winning the game if you don't back off here and like work with me. Because the friendly approach had not really been working. Unfortunately, that also fails, and we officially enter death war. Fortunately, conversations with Snoo are going really well, and I'm investing a lot in them because they're really important. If you go to the next map, actually, downpour. Oh, that's not the right map, actually. Oops.
Yeah, I think this is you discussing your builds, right?
Oh, this is in winter. Maybe, okay. I think I actually put these in the wrong order. If you go to the next map, then we can rewind after we go that.
Yeah.
Next map after this one. No, okay, never
No,
mind.
this is the yeah. So
Those are the maps I was looking for. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, the ones with Snoo.
Which one? Oh, this
Oh,
one.
sorry.
This
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
Yeah.
these ones.
Sorry.
So yeah, this is just me. Yeah, sorry. No, it's okay. This is the map with Snoo, so we're kind of coordinating. I'm trying to find out exactly what the C tiles look like so we can figure out tactics. Yeah, excuse the bad drawing, but yeah, this is like the general, like, here's all the land centers I can see, and then I'm trying to get a sense from them of like what all the C tiles look like. And if you move to the next one,
This
I
thing.
also make this very crappy cartoonish image,
Yeah.
but very informative at the same time of what my nearby powers will look like. And this is
Yeah.
kind of what I send them of what my map looks like right now. So I have Usniji as the yellow. I'm just this giant red blob between these 3 little areas in the sea. From what they've told me, they're from the top left is a regional. Um, and we have
Yeah.
Praya and we have Duglar. Yeah.
Because we imagine that they are this little island up here. If you could see my
Yes,
cursor.
exactly. On a continent up there.
Yeah.
Uh,
Um. Yeah. This is
uh,
your.
Yes, so this is, oh yeah, if you go to this, this is just some plans I was making. So once fall retreats, actually, no, before fall, no, this is after fall retreats. Okay.
Yeah.
So fall
This.
retreats happen, they go to NK. And this is just me mapping out based on disbands. So I know that they've gone down to 3 centers here. and I know that they have 4 units, and I can see all 4 of their units. And this is just from information that Snu and Pry are telling me, because at this point we have them fully surrounded. So I'm just making a plan for every single one of their possible disbands and what I'll do tactically. I think I got a bit bored, and I had a lot of things. Um, yeah.
I think this is the only
Um,
time you do maps like this.
yeah, I mean, usually it's like you don't have full information to know exactly, but this is literally me doing order as a whole map phase early for all the different possibilities. So we can just see like some of the different tactical options I was considering. I was considering a convoy into AUOP in some of the situations. Um, yeah, we don't need to go through all the different examples if you don't want to, but I just thought it'd
Yeah,
be interesting to see like visualized all the different options I would consider based on because just mapping out all these tactics was really fun and interesting.
yeah, I agree.
If you want to go back a phase as well, actually, yeah, something else that's interesting is we notice I explore INUV here for the first time. And this is the phase where I get super nerdy about how explore works, and I go into a really long thing. Um, so let me check, see if I have that. Um,
Yeah, something interesting I noticed um, was when you walked into this ASGY spot, you got vision on all these sea tiles, but there is this continent that you see a lot of the coastline of up north, and you have no idea what's there. No fleets have been coming down from there, like at all so far. So that was something that I was super curious about this game.
mhm. Yeah, it is really interesting. I was also wondering what was going on up in my north. I really wanted to be able to spend a fleet to explore up there, but I wasn't able to because this Usniji war meant I was very committed to these armies in the south and all that.
Yeah,
Um, okay, I found it. So INOV is where I get really nerdy about Explore, and I just kind of had a very fun nerd out session about this that I wanted to share because I think some people find it interesting. So the way that they described Explore originally, before just deciding it would be random, was it would show the closest supply center to the unit, targeting unclaimed first, then by nations that you do not know, then alphabetical. Um, so in fall of year 2, when IEGV explores, I find a Pria center that is 3 tiles away from it.
yeah,
Um, this implies that there was no unclaimed centers um, or Duglar centers within 3 tiles of IEGV, I believe. I don't remember why Duglar, but that's what it said. Later on, I find INUV, which is revealed, and it's also 3 tiles away from IEGV. This means at the time of fall year 2, IEGV must have been either unclaimed or Duglar. I'm sorry, neither unclaimed or Duglar. Oh, because at the time I had not met Pria, but I had met Duglar in the fall of year 2. Since it would have been revealed instead of the Pria Center, because it would have been revealed before that, which means I know that IU and INUV must have been captured by Pria and become a Pria Center by year 1. I don't know if this is making sense. I believe it makes, or at least I'm not explaining it very well.
yeah. I think I remember this. I was really lost when
Yeah,
you went into it the first time.
let's see.
I think I'm I'm still
Yeah,
quite lost.
I think I'm doing a worse job of explaining it. Let's see. Um,
I just remember you having an argument with Fire about this.
wasn't an argument. It was more just me getting really nerdy about it. But basically, I'll just skip the logic and get to the conclusion, which was what the mapped out conclusion was either that Pria had taken IUNV in year 1 and they had kept control of it in year 2. Um, that was the thing that I had found out. Because if it had been uncontrolled or controlled by Duglar, I believe I would have seen it in a different order. Oh, now I remember. Because I hadn't met Pria before, when I explored, I would have seen I would have seen a Pria center before a Duglar center. So because I saw INUV, it had to have been controlled by Pria.
Gotcha. That
Because at the
makes
time I hadn't
sense.
met Pria. Yeah, that's the. I don't know why I wrote this whole explanation when that's really just a simple thing. And there was another thing at the same time where with Explore, I would know that there are no unrevealed centers within 4 tiles of IGEV amongst any power except Usniji, because um, the explorers were searching in alphabetical order. That was the other thing. So because I knew that they were in alphabetical order, I knew that there would be no Pria centers and no Duglar centers within 4, or SNU, because it should ping for the order it should have pinged was unclaimed within 4 tiles, then new powers within 4 tiles, then Duglar within 4 tiles, then Pria within 4, then SNU within 4, then new Sneegee within 4. So the fact that I had seen with Explore a new Sneegee tile within 4 meant that no other power
You're
had any
skipping a bit.
centers.
we,
Am
we
I?
yeah, we haven't seen that yet.
Is this from? Oh, this is from literally the resolution of this phase. This is from the fall retreats phase. Um, I
Yeah,
believe so
right.
anyway. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
from the void of that phase, so I don't know. I don't know how because I guess I didn't see one in Explore. I am confused, but
yeah,
sorry. All this was several months ago for us, so we were just going off of what we can re-put back together, and it's hard sometimes to get everything in chronological.
yeah. The something else I wanted to mention. You did
Mhm.
figure out the victory condition of Sneegee, which was
I found out their trait and their victory condition. Yeah.
and their victory condition was like support holding everything in one supply center,
Yeah,
right?
it was kill a country, like take the last center of a country, and then have 5 units support hold around a UIL, and also control like 10 centers. And I was like, that's a really easy victory condition to achieve. Except it's not easy if everyone knows about it, which is part of why I was like posing this like threat, I guess. Was you can basically never achieve that victory condition if people know about it, because people will never let you have 6 units support holding a UIL.
Yeah,
Not that yellow's in a great spot anyway here, but
yeah.
yeah.
I think their
Uh,
lore was that they were like demonic imps or whatever.
yeah, they were tieflings, I believe. And yeah, so I find out their WinCon. I find out that their trait is the nuke thing, just like we expected. And I also learn more about the nuke thing even after, which is that I learned that the nuked centers can actually be a clarification for the GM. And the way that the GMs would generally do stuff is if you had the ability yourself, or if you had the ability because it was taken from another power, you could ask like more detailed questions, obviously, because you now have access to the information. So one of the things I had asked at this time was, are you able to like walk into and take like one of these centers? And the result was, yeah, if you were to walk into it and fall, it would change possession, and also like the center would be lost in the way that that normally works. The only thing is that your unit would be immediately disbanded.
Yeah,
And that becomes really important that I know this, and most people on the map do not know it. Pria will still be treating IENC like it's invulnerable. Usniji will still be treating IENC and anything else nuked like it's invulnerable. And that becomes very crucial information, because if you see why people are ignoring IENC later on, they just think it's invulnerable.
yeah. Which I mean, I don't blame them. It's
Yeah, which works great for me, and is also why I'm not sharing it with anyone.
yeah,
I'm also around this time, I'm also considering using this void tile to pop my own armies eventually, like after the Usniji war is over. I'm thinking I'll pop a lot of these armies because I have to build so many armies. Like I'm building 2 right now, and start building fleets, because I'll be on 5 fleets in one, 5 armies in one
I
fleet,
forgot
and I
about
want to have
that.
much more fleets than that. Yeah,
Yeah, I remember that.
yeah. It
Did
was a bit inspired from the 7 Years of Christmas variant, where Bug and I did something very similar, where we used a void tile to get rid of armies to help with DMZing, or at least to transition our unit types.
yeah,
Um,
that's fun.
it was fun, yeah. We'll talk about it someday, hopefully.
Maybe
Uh, maybe. Um, yeah,
we should probably
not
move
much
on
else
to
to say.
the. We've been on this
Yeah,
phase
spring.
for ages.
Yeah,
They
there's a lot
did.
to talk about this phase.
They retreated to Anki here, so they did not
Yes,
agree with your thing, and they disbanded
AUIL,
AUIL, which is a
which
fleet.
I think I was very unhappy to see, because I think that was the most anti-me disband at the time. Both because
Yeah,
it's a fleet, and it's the only fleet that they can't loop around to get to me.
the important
But
bit.
I still had plans for every solution, for every situation. I still built the 2 armies. I think, yeah, I
Was it?
think even if Usniji wanted to go anti-me, they were probably better off taking their army off, taking the Anki army off, and getting me to build the 2 fleets here. But because I'm building 2 armies, I'm completely fine on this front. I'm not going to lose. The only thing that could be really bad is if Downpour was to stab me. Downpour played SNU. If SNU was to stab me. But aside from that happening, or like Pria doing a really committed stab on me, I'm feeling pretty secure at this point. It's just how
Yeah,
fast am I gonna push them, and how many dots am I gonna get?
Yeah. Probably will have a hard time stabbing you too, because they're quite far away. They moved that
Yeah, the
Isker
bigger
already.
concern would not actually be stabbing, it would be Snoo gets all of Usniji's dots. That was more of what I was worried about at this time. Or Praya gets all of them.
Yeah.
And
But
then they're on like 7 to 9 centers while I'm on 5 or 6 or whatever.
should we look at the next turn?
Yeah, sure. Oh,
I
it
think I
didn't have the
missed.
move. Okay. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, here it is. Wrong order apparently. Oopsies.
Is this the spring? Yes, this is the spring. Okay. Yeah. I do some really clever tactics this phase. It's not too surprising because I was doing like all the different retreat plans, so I already been thinking about these tactics a lot. This might look like an absolute mess. What am I doing? I'm letting them into ANJ and NaOH, but this ends up being really good for me, and I really liked this convoy. Yeah, I'm trying to think. There's a lot I can talk about here, but basically I'm allowing them into potentially ANOH, and I want to get this convoy through because I can force ANOH back pretty easily. Trying to think. I know Snoo is also on the other side and can potentially support me into a center. Um,
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Here's what the clean map
Yeah,
looks like, so we
yes,
can.
clean map helps a lot with this. So it looks messy, but it's not as messy as it reveals. Yes, I'm guaranteed to lose ANOH or ANI here, so I'm not even going to really bother with that unit. I'm just going to say, okay, you're taking a center off of me, but I'm going to take 2 off of you. Oh, the other thing is I can actually guarantee a UYK here. So I'm in a pretty good spot. I can guarantee take 2 dots, and I believe Snoo is supposed to get the other one.
Yeah.
And I can cover Envy as well.
Yeah. Didn't
But yeah,
didn't
so
you like they want AUIL?
yeah, I think the plan at this point was to do something where like Snoo supports themselves into AUIL, and that in retreats would mean that I go to Engo anyway, either way, something like that. And then so I was just going to go to Engo and I was going to go to AUYK, something like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
There's a bit of a mess of moves, but it does work.
it's a mess, but I really end up liking this position. Yeah, it looks much worse than I think it actually is.
Yeah. Surely yeah, when it's all colored in, it looks a little bit better.
Yeah, yeah, like this was actually I think I don't know, maybe I had a better moveset. I'd be very interested if someone points one out, but I looked at this phase a lot and I really liked this order set.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Definitely saved things, that's for sure.
because there's no way they would get into ANOH without letting the convoy happen, pretty much, and me getting into AUIL. So
Yeah, interestingly, um, Ushniji does or should know that they can walk into IE and C here to get the dot. Since they have the
yes,
power and they could have asked
yes,
to
but they had
jump.
never asked clarification on how that works. They'd kind of just assumed that it was invulnerable.
Yeah. So I don't think they walk into it.
They do not know.
They end
And at
up
this point, I think they also recognize that they're dying, and they see this fleet as their contingency that's going to get elsewhere on the map and maybe take another center.
yeah.
Um,
So they do just kind of run away,
yeah.
which is interesting.
The other thing about my spring moves actually was I was just accepting that they would probably support into ANOH, so that was kind of why I was just gambiting it away. And then yeah, I do what I thought I was going to do, so I cover Anvei. Something that's really surprising and interesting here is we see that Usniji does not actually bounce me in Anvei. In fact, I can't even see what their unit's doing.
Yeah. I think at
Um,
this time we assumed that it moved to the left and there actually is more land.
yeah. Although no, I don't think I assumed that because I
Or
knew from Downpour's maps that there wasn't. So
or it got
uh,
convoyed. I think that was
yes, we thought it got convoyed.
I know what happened to it in hindsight,
Mhm.
but
We thought it got convoyed. I think a lot of the questions were who convoyed it and to where for a while was a lot of the question. But I think immediately after in the winter or what have you, it becomes a lot more clear.
yeah.
Um, because something else happens this phase that's actually not shown on the moves map.
Oh.
Um, yeah. If you want to go to the clean map, oh, there's a fleet there.
Oh
Get
yeah.
on there. Yeah. So I did cover it,
I
but I did not
forgot.
cover it from a supported attack. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Um,
That's right.
so I get log stabbed for the second time this game. Um, from a power I
uh
had not met before. And there's a lot of interesting stuff that happens right now. I meet a burgundy power, and I also meet a blue power over to the right. What
yeah.
the heck are they doing there? I've never heard of a blue power.
Yeah.
I've heard of green, but I haven't heard of blue.
Yeah, so
Um,
this is entirely unheard of country. Just
yeah,
out of nowhere.
and INWW is really crazy to me because that's inland. So that means that wasn't just a convoy, like, or it could be a convoy, but it was there for a whole 2 phases, and I never heard about it.
Yeah.
Um,
And Douglar probably doesn't know about it.
yeah, well, they might now because it's adjacent to their home center, but yeah, if they even control that anymore.
Yeah, it's all you're only
It
seeing
is
what
at
the
this point.
starting supply centers are with this.
Yeah, I see who controls the core. As at this point, I was very much like confused, like why hadn't Duglar told me more about what's going on to the south, and why hadn't they invited me south? Because I was like, I'm a solid ally, I would have helped Duglar, and it seems like some chaos is going on where they're being attacked from 3 different powers or something. So, yeah, and they don't want me to get involved. Um, anyway,
Yeah.
something. So I meet these 2 powers. Bosper is the blue power, who I'll learn throughout the next sort of phase or so between them and other people that they are a colonial power. One of the starting colonials, of which I believe there to be around 3. And the other power is Tuthu, the one currently in Anve, the one who I was going to be my destined partner, who I was going to win the game with,
also
has stabbed me from the fog.
also played by Captain Meme.
Also played by Captain Meme, yes. And we were both online for the fall adjudication, and I was immediately like, I'm so surprised, and Tuthu, question mark, because I had already thought about like what I'm going to say to Tuthu when I first meet them, but I was not expecting it to be under this circumstance. Um, Thankfully, they immediately, and they do a really good job at de-escalating, and I also wanted to de-escalate. So they start telling me a ton of information. They're basically just like, yeah, I just wanted this dot for this year. Totally want to work with you. Like, because I also knew I have this like solo win condition in addition to working with Tuthu, where I take 6 centers on Warfuria. I thought, okay, Tuthu probably has the same thing, where if they take 6 centers from Icos Sequilia, and is that what they're playing for? Are they just committing hard to going against me? I need to, stop that before that becomes a big thing.
Yeah.
Because it was pretty clear. I found out that there were one of the other 3 colonials. I found out that there are 3 colonials on Warfuria, and that's a colonial homeland continent, which makes a lot of sense to me and matches my lore. A lot of the stuff that Tuthu is saying seems to be true, seems to ring true, and I start to get convinced that, okay, they are actually playing for this like 2-way win alliance play. That being said, I'm still a little bit wary in terms of Anve, and I also believe that they're much bigger than me and have like a strength advantage on me. I also learned that they are at war with Snoo, either now or very soon, or at least they have an adversarial relationship. And I believe I find out from them as well that what happened with the disappearing Anjay army was Snoo convoyed Anjay out into an island, and then also nuked it at the exact same time. So we're having a lot of very useful information sharing. So I'm able to share like about Usniji, about the nuking power. They're able to share the fact that they obviously saw that convoy happen. They share to me about Snooze ability, I believe. I don't know if they do it immediately or soon after when they get confirmation, but I'm starting to learn about that.
And Snoo didn't
Uh,
go to AUIL as well.
yes,
Like,
Snoo did not take AUIL even though I gave them permission to, so that was a bit surprising. Um,
yeah, I think a little bit before this, you were concerned that Snoo was going to work with Usniji, even though
Correct.
like work with both of you. I think
Mhm.
is what the assumption is, which I think is
Well,
the
it was
case.
also, yeah, Usniji's dying, and the nuke power is useful, and like they could use them as a vassal. Um,
Yeah, the nuke power is very useful.
it's also Snoo is the only power that Usniji hadn't been stabbed by, so I knew that like they were probably looking to go vassalize under them. Um,
Yeah, but yeah, stabbed by your game focused ally. Like,
yeah, I also, I got fog stabbed. I learn immediately about Snoo's ability. From Tuthu. And before Snoo had told me they have a teleportation ability and that it had like certain conditions. I later learned after the game that they were calling themselves like the Endermen and like they had the Enderman ability, which is funny because their power is also purple. So it's a very good thing to come up with. But yeah, they were saying that they had this teleportation ability, which is somewhat true. What they actually had was they could move through deep sea tiles, almost as if they had 2 movement or more. They could just move from one side of a deep sea zone through as many deep sea tiles as they want and go through the other. So they would treat everything around a deep sea as adjacent. I actually thought for most of the game the way that would work is that they can literally teleport across multiple deep seas, so they're just like everywhere they are is adjacent to any deep sea province. That's actually not the way it works. It's just a single deep sea or connected deep sea tiles that they can teleport through. They can't just teleport from the top left corner of the map to the top right corner of the map, assuming there aren't a deep sea highway between those two.
Yeah.
But regardless, very high mobility, but they cannot actually move into or be inside of the deep sea tiles themselves. And their victory condition is based on getting to a certain center count and then also no one having fleets around deep sea tiles past a certain threshold. I think it's like 4 or 5 opposing deep sea tile fleets. So yeah, so I learned that. I was like, oh, that means they might want to go against me because I'm going to be a pretty big naval power because I'm on this island. And Tuthu just stabbed me with their support, I believe, this phase.
Yeah.
So I was pretty concerned about a lot of that.
We want to go to the clean map here.
Yeah, we can go to the clean map. The other thing about the convoy out is I also learned that Usniji had nuked the tile that they were being convoyed into. So they made it an impassable tile. And the idea, I think, was for them to be immortal because they have a center that could never be taken because it was nuked. And they could use that to keep that one fleet on the board, this ISEC fleet, and be an immortal that can nuke whoever they want and has a fleet. I think
Yeah.
that was the game plan. But they actually get a build here. I forget how that happens. Oh, because
Is
they're
it?
taking a center and their unit gets disbanded, so they actually get a build here,
They,
which also surprised me.
they built a fleet.
Um,
So
they built a fleet, yes. I don't know what to think about that one. I think I was a bit confused actually at the time because I thought Army was more anti-me. I think in reality it was just they were committed more to this get off the continent game plan. They had already given up on the continent to some extent.
yeah.
Um, and I actually don't build here because Anvei was taken, and I'm really sad about that because I was really relying on this build in AENE, and now ANER is even more of an issue. And it's also going to introduce a really long-term issue for me that will continue to plague me for most of the game. Because my IENC core was nuked, I'm really struggling with places to build. Now with Anvei taken as well, I have one place to build, and Usniji is probably going to mess with it, so I might not even be able to build there. And if I retake Anvei, I still can't build an Anvei the year where I take it. So it's looking like this next winter I'm going to have 0 build centers.
Yeah.
And that's just going to be a continual issue because of this nuke.
Yeah. Do we want to look at the moves here?
Yeah, I also didn't talk about relationship with Boss Bear, but yeah, friendly opening press. Wasn't super talkative. They didn't seem to be doing too well. There was a lot of conversations about the home continent because I was really interested in Warfuria. Yeah, in
Yeah.
terms of moves, I think it's mostly just tactics to clean up Usniji here.
Wasn't it a
Uh,
triple between them, Tuthu, and like Salt?
yes,
They said.
Salt, Bosper, and Salt is not the power name. I actually forget their power name. No one ever referred to them by their
Yeah.
power name.
Nobody
It
said
was
the
just Salt.
power name. They just said Salt.
Yeah, actually, I think I heard it like once in the entire game. It was like Z something, like Zaspov or I don't know.
I think it's
Um,
Samzil or something.
Zamzil, yeah, something like
I
that. Anyway, yeah, those 3 countries were the colonials on Warfuria, and I expected them to also have colonies elsewhere or something. And there was a bunch of war back and forth between all 3 of them, basically taking 2-way alliances. But they were working with Meme to contain Salt or something because Salt's power was really strong,
yeah.
something like that. Yeah. And I also learned from Meme that like they were controlling a lot of the islands north of me, and they were more of a naval power. And I learned that Salt was like this massive land power on Warfuria
Yeah.
that was like boxed into a corner or something like that. Okay.
What was that?
Yep. Moves. Let's see. Tactics. Anything interesting here? Supporting to AUIL. At this point, I don't think I asked Snoo for permission for this. I think this is the best tactical moves, and Snoo didn't take it when they could, and it seems like they were propping up Usniji as a vassal anyway. So I was just not. I didn't ask for permission. I'm just AUIL is mine now.
Yeah.
And then I'm moving over. Yeah, this is another really interesting order set. I'm moving over towards ANAV. Um, I think I assumed that they were going to move into AENE here, and I wanted to be able to support myself back into AENE in the fall. I'm also support holding Engo because I'm worried about Snoo stabbing me here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, and I asked Meme to move to Angie just in case, so they might support me into AUIL, but it ended up not being necessary. I wasn't sure how much Usniji and Snoo would work together in this phase and care about the continent. The answer seems to be not very much.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
I think I think Snoo wanted them to focus on more other stuff. As
yeah,
we're
which
going to
makes sense.
learn, uh, when did we learn the thing about Snoo?
Um, this is the spring phase or the fall phase? This is the fall phase, I believe, right? Or is this the spring?
This is a spring.
Okay. In the fall phase is when I get quote for quote Snooze ability from Meme.
Oh, not Snoo's ability.
Oh,
The
about
fact
where they're actually located.
where they're actually located, which is not
So I think I had already gotten a sense of that just because of the teleportation stuff. I think by the end of this fall phase, when I actually learned word for word what their ability was,
probably
I start to
from
learn.
meme. Like,
Yeah, a lot of this information is getting passed from Meme. And I'm learning that, okay, Meme is telling me the truth on a lot of things, and Snoo is not telling me the truth on a lot of things, but a lot of the things were related to Snoo are kind of innocuous. So I was kind of okay with it, and I still needed to keep a friendly relationship. But Snoo was pushing a lot of stuff. They were pushing me against Tuthu, obviously. I kept kind of counter pushing back where it was like, Snoo would constantly be like, um, yeah, go push Tuthu, like build fleets and push Tuthu. And I would be kind of like, yeah, well, you see, I'm really struggling with this Niji war and like the fact that they've been like propped up and like, well, I didn't say that they've been propped up, but like kind of like being like, hey, you need to let me kill this Niji faster. You can't be doing this stuff where you're propping them up because it's leading to me killing them slower and I'm not able to help you against Tuthu. I think that ended up being fairly relevant in terms of the fact that Usniji constantly was taking the most anti-me options in these last like 2 or so years means that I wasn't able to build fleets. It means that I wasn't able to make any sort of alliance push with Snoo or stick with them against Tuthu. Obviously, secretly, and Snoo didn't know this at the time, but I had the secret alliance with Tuthu. Um, Later on, Snoo will end up dislodging Meme and I'll learn a bit more about our win conditions. But it was very real. I was being like, yeah, I want to do this Eshil Snoo alliance against Tuthu. Um, but and I think genuinely, I just don't have the fleets and I can't do anything here.
yeah,
Uh,
kind of stuck until this war is over.
exactly. And yeah, we also see Usniji ignore my INC core, which might, even if they had known the rules, might have made sense anyways, just because they would lose that very valuable fleet on the map
Yeah,
and not be able to rebuild it. Um,
that's
so
fair.
maybe it makes sense to ignore it anyway, but yeah, they don't take my dot. But also, unfortunately,
I
well, I guess they'd have to do that in the fall anyway, but they're not going to do it this fall. If we want to go to fall moves, we can.
I do have a
Uh,
question though for this
yeah, what's up?
specific phase. What is this symbol here?
That is exploring. I'm exploring right there with
Uh,
ASGY. I don't think it was able to do anything else that was useful tactically. Because I wanted to be an ASGY for the time that the fall comes. I think I was considering convoys with the army. I was considering a lot of the support options, and I just wanted
yeah,
to be an ASGY
and it
for
found
efficient.
ANPR, didn't it? That's right.
I did, which I assume at this point is a Tuthu center.
Yeah, considering their fleet right there.
Yeah, and I knew that they had come from the north as well.
You did also walk into INWW and meet the
Yes.
screen power.
I met the Green Power finally, which is Oglos. So I met them for the first time. I realized at this point that Douglar is super dead, and I sent some messages to Douglar, and I was like, "Hey, why didn't you tell me that you were like super dead?" Because I just thought Douglar was here. I knew they were fighting, but I didn't realize they were this dead. Again, I thought they would have invited me to help them if they were this dead, but they did not. Yeah,
No.
so I learned that they're here. I learned that Bosper's pushing south. Bosper's just interested in getting dots. I'm like, hey, we could potentially get dots from Oglos here with IDGK. Apparently, Oglos is really big. I'm being told by other people like Snoo. Snoo's kind of my knows everyone on the map person who was telling me a lot of, and Tuthu as well, like telling me a lot of information about the general board state. And Oglos is doing really well, apparently. Um,
Yeah, it's interesting how Snoo knows of Oglos right now.
it is interesting, yeah.
Considering
Um,
we thought that they were up in this top left area. And
Yes.
they
Well, at this
oh
point, I know that they have this move through deep sea stuff. I know that they're moving around a lot, and I also think that they've met a lot of people, and they're saying that this is stuff that was shared with them. But yes, it is still very interesting, and it will. Yeah, they are definitely closer to Oglis than they have claimed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guess we can move here. Oh yeah, this was a map error update. You see this?
I don't think that was an error, right? I'm moving into, oh, the fact that I didn't see it originally.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yes. And this is also helpful because it confirms to me what I think Bosper had told me at this point, that they had convoyed into INRU. It's also my first time seeing INRU and IEDFG. I had been told about these tiles previously by Douglar at this point, but it's nice to have confirmation that this is all true
Yeah,
and what my coastline looks like. At this point, I know that INRU is also the coast, that there's water tiles next to it.
especially because the
Because,
coast looks prettier.
yeah, and also the convoy.
Yeah. Um, Usniji disbands the fleet. There.
Yes. I think it was even a forced it was either, no, okay. It might not have been a forced disband, but they choose to take it off anyway. It might have been. Snoo was on the other sea tiles, potentially.
Yeah.
Unclear.
Here's the moves. Ooh.
Yep. So I choose to focus on ANE instead of ANIR, and that was entirely because of the build thing I was talking about previously, where I need to have keep these centers, so at least I have the possibility of hoping to build next year, if not, and not push it another year out. I'm very concerned about that at this point, because I won't even be able to put units down this year.
Yeah. Go and take
Uh,
your home supply center first, and then the ANI are.
yeah. INWW was interesting. I explore here. I had explore in for most of the phase, but I was talking to Bosper about potentially supporting them into, or supporting me into the Oglos Center. I ended up deciding like, hey, maybe I can support you into it because I actually realized I don't need the dot and I don't build this year, and I would like them to do decently well and be like helpful around me. So I offered them support into it. They ended up not replying to me order to an explore, and I find out that they had actually kept their order in as a support into me from probably way earlier in the phase, I imagine.
Yeah.
But at this point, Bosper was not doing very well globally, so they weren't very active either.
Yeah. It's very interesting how they got an army all the way into here, though.
It is very interesting, and I wish it was able to stay around for longer. NJ moves out. Uh, I get to successfully hold all my stuff in AUIL. I'm just having them support hold each other.
Oh,
And a new arriver in Anve. It's new this time.
yeah, you actually see their color. They're
Yeah, first time I
magenta.
see one of their units. Yeah, magenta. I don't mind this that much. I'm just surprised by it, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Tuthu and Snoo are at war up in
Mhm.
these islands to the north that you can't really see much
Yep.
of.
I'm glad to see confirmation of that because I was very worried about a Tuthu Snoo alliance. I think they went back and forth a little bit in the early game, but at this point they were at war over the Northern Islands because it seems like they both had substantial fleet presences there.
Yeah. But yeah, here's what you have a build and you
Oh
can't build
yeah,
it anywhere, so you try to build it.
and I'm also very sad because my new friend Bosper does no press with me and then disbands their unit next to me. And I was like, dang, I was going to give you a dot there last phase and even next year if I had been able to. Soon after Bosper ends up subbing out. I don't know if it was immediately, but a new Bosper player does take their position.
Yeah.
Um,
But
and the
yeah.
new Bosper player, I don't remember when exactly they sub in, but they end up being pretty helpful in that like they recognize like they went down to like 1 dot and they're like a 1 dot vassal basically. But they were just willing to share me basically all their map information, which is pretty relevant because they were still colonial in the early game because of our friendly relationship. Yeah, which was
Yeah.
really helpful.
Yeah.
So they told me a lot about the eastern coast of Icos here and further out.
Yeah. I think that was much later on as well.
Yeah, that was much later on, but yeah, that did happen.
I think Snoogy's supposed to be in A and IR here. That's just a map
That
error.
sounds right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yep, and then
There
they
it
are.
is.
But I think they take it off this. No, maybe they don't take it off.
No,
I
they
don't
don't.
know. No, they don't. Okay.
You self bounce in A and
Yep,
OH.
springtime.
You can
Exactly.
just force disband their army.
Yep. And I moved down to INLG because I want to find out more of what's going on in the south and get involved.
Yeah. You
Whoa, that's a lot to see.
there's a lot. Yeah, a lot of
Now I
units.
know that, yeah, Teal and Oglis are at war. This also leads me to believe that Oglis is doing really well, which backs up all the stuff that I'm hearing from Snoo and Tuthu, because, wow, they've killed all of Duglar and they're pushing now into Praia.
Yeah.
They must be massive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially because they're from another continent too, so presumably they won their home continent, or at least they have at least half of it probably, and they're safe. Um, so that leads me to, and I was already pretty okay with Praia, besides them nuking me early on. Especially now that I see that they're not this super strong power either. I'm very happy to work with Praia here.
Yeah. 'Cause it seems like they've been having issues with Oglos.
Exactly, and it seems like everyone's going to be having issues with an Oglis victory soon enough.
Yeah. Was that when people started worried about that?
Um, yeah, I think certainly like near me, there was a lot of like anti-Oglos push. Kadaria was also, I haven't mentioned them at all, but Kadaria, which is like a darker purple, was being fearmongered about as like a solo threat the entire time. But they were from what I'd heard to be like the southern part of the map or the southern east part of the map. So like pretty far away from me, it seemed like. At this point, I'm also learning I'm not only in the northeast part of Icos, but I'm also just like the northeast part of the map as a whole.
Yeah.
Um, or not east, sorry, northwest part of the map, yeah. And Kadario is from the southeast.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Interesting thing. You discover Anko as a
I
supply
discovered
center.
Anko, which was previously the center that Usniji had been convoyed into and nuked.
Yeah. Which also could have
I
been
remember
one of
this.
your first neutrals as well.
It could have been, yeah. I could have taken it in the first year if I had walked up to ASLC like you thought. Because you recognized it from literally the first phase of the game. That looks like an island, and it was an island.
Yeah. Very interesting. But probably smarter that you went down here. Um,
Yeah, in general, I think I played a very interesting Eshil game compared to like how the designers probably intended it to be played, given that I didn't touch any of the Northern Islands at all, and I didn't really invest in Icos. It was just this very Usniji war-centered uh, Aquilia Island uh,
yeah.
based power.
Yeah, I think they
Um,
intended Usniji to be more focused on this because they got
I
three.
stab Snoo here. I tell them I'm not taking Anve. I need their help against Tuthu, etc. But I take it. I mostly not even necessarily because I need the build, because I don't need the build, but because I need the center. Again, this is another decision that's being informed by this INC nuke previously. I need to have places to build. I can't, even if I take Anve now this year, I can't build it until next year. And yeah, I can't ever really catch up on my number of builds if I don't start having 2 cores as soon as possible.
Yeah,
So I take it.
don't you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 units? And you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 supply
Yeah,
centers at this
yeah.
point.
So I'm already going to be waiving one this year.
Yeah,
I'm actually taking Anir as well, so I think I might actually have like 3 builds here. I don't know. Taking Envy, Anir, and I waived one last year, so I'm +3 with one place to build, I believe, which
yeah,
I'm not thrilled about. Yeah,
yeah.
that's not even to mention the possibility of future harassment on my centers.
You
At this
move.
point, I move out of INLG. Yeah, I'm trying to remember what inspired this decision. I think I wanted to cover INWW from Oglos and just keep that safe for me. And I think the other thing was Priya had sent me something along the lines. I remember you laughed about this when I got this press, but it's something like, my tactics are invincible. Or no, it was tactically I simply win. I asked them like what the tactics are for this phase. They're trying to like tactically I simply win.
Did they
So
say that?
yeah, and you brought it into the void, and it's like
I don't remember
yeah.
that. That's
Yeah,
hilarious.
yeah, so I was like, oh, okay, so you don't actually need me here. So I'm gonna walk back, cover INWW, and maybe get supported into IGJK. I think Priya also wanted to follow me into INLG at this point, like support themselves in or something. And I was like, fine, I have one army. I'm basically just a subsidiary power here. Um,
Yeah,
and I'm moving into Iskar as well just to get more vision and potentially start up convoys was kind of the idea. So now that I've taken all of Usniji's continent, I'm just gonna start convoying armies over
yeah.
to like,
Especially
yeah,
because you've had armies in these spots. There is
exactly.
you know that this is like as much of an island as possible. Like there's just water all around this at this point.
Yes, exactly. I know that. Yeah, this is the entire island basically, and I've been told by both Tuthu and Snoo at this point that there's nothing, no land next to Anjay either.
Yeah. And you're
Okay, seeing more of the map. We explore, we see INFI as well, which is new. And I know that Praya controls it, or at least like from conversations. And there's some fighting down there with Praya and like Oglos. And also I know that Kadaria is getting up to there around this time, or if not now, soon after. Um, and I know that Kadaria and Oglos are going to war, and a lot of people are telling me that this southern Kadaria power and Oglos are like the two board leaders, and they're fighting.
yeah.
Uh,
Just to see this ocean tile.
I see that ocean tile. Yep.
There's nothing there, which is
And now I'm getting to where Praya's centers are. This is also where I'm starting to feel a little bit scammed by Explore, because you spend so many phases like exploring each one of those tiles independently. That's like 4 whole explore phases. Whereas if I moved one unit into like INLG or like IPLL, like you just immediately see like 3 of those centers.
yeah,
Or moving to INLG alone sees 4 centers. So
yeah. It's definitely got its upsides, but
it's better than not being able to do anything. But some of the powers are very, very strong.
it's a very diplomatically nice way of figuring stuff out.
Yes, I agree. So one of the things I theorized a lot about it that I like about it is I could see if people lie to me about stuff, like because I have this extra information I'm not supposed to have, and use it to see if people are being honest to me. The problem with that is, and it's good to know if people are lying to you or not. You still don't want people to be lying to you, right? It's like even if
Yeah,
you know a stab is coming, you don't want people to be stabbing you. So it's like it helps to know that it's coming, but it's also in the first place you just want people to be your ally and on your side. So sometimes knowing that they're going to stab you isn't always the most valuable. And especially because it doesn't do anything to increase the power of my units or increase my ability to win wars with people. Um, yeah,
yeah.
it's not as useful. Like, for example, I really love snooze power um, that lets you teleport units around, or some of the other powers that we'll see later. I shouldn't use teleport because that's what they describe it, but like being able to move massive amounts of places and also being able to see a ton of tiles that are adjacent to deep seas everywhere.
At this point, do you figure out what happened to Douglar?
I don't actually know what phase I find that out on. Eventually, Douglar subs out, and then I have conversations with the new Douglar. So I'll talk about that now because I'll find it about it soon, if not now.
Yeah,
Like the Bosper sub out, I have really good conversations with the new Douglar. They give me a whole map of like what they've seen basically as well. And they've seen that this is West Icos, and Icos is actually divided into West Icos and East Icos. And that eastern continent is actually not an eastern continent at all. It is Eastern Icos, and it is connected by a land bridge. And there's this like central water between the two as well. But this is this land bridge. And then they also share to me a very funny story about what happened with their power. Do you want to share if you remember?
um, I think it involves IDDC. Yes.
Yes. So Douglar has this ability, and their ability is tied to IDDC. And what happens is whenever someone takes IDDC, they gain Douglar's power, and Douglar gains that person's power. So
Yeah,
it's an ability that it has other elements to it. So I guess it can say the entirety of Douglar's power. It lets them take centers in the spring as opposed to just the fall. Also, they lose centers during the spring from opponents as well. And the other thing it does is if you have 3 units around a single unit, it will disband them. But then if someone else has 3 units around your units, it will disband your units. And I didn't really learn the details of any of this until, sorry, I learned the spring part really early on. I didn't learn the disband part until way later on. Or actually, I think I learned it early on, but I forgot about it, and I thought it was just the spring taking thing. But the really funny thing that happened was Oglos here had a win condition that required them to use their ability. So their ability was to raise tiles. So they could spend 2 turns of a unit doing a raise order, and if it wasn't tapped or interacted with, it would remove the center off of the tile while keeping it as part of their center count. It had to be one of their own centers. So they could erase these centers, and their win condition required them to raise some number of centers, like 4 or 5. And their ability or their trait was their ability to raise these centers. Well, they had lost the ability to raise these centers and given it to Douglar, so now it was impossible for Oglis to win the game unless Douglar took back their own capital. And Oglis refused to do, and Douglar refused to do so. And not only did Douglar refuse to do so, they had 1 unit left, and they raised the only center that the unit had, so they became a literal immortal. where they had no centers on the map and they could never die, and they just had this one army.
Yeah, unless it got force disbanded.
Unless it got forced disbanded, yes, but it never did.
But that was one of the most interesting stories to hear of.
Yes, absolutely. So at this point, I know, or whenever I learn that, I know that Ogos is massive, but Ogos can also never win.
Yeah,
Which also meant that I was much less worried about Ogos getting more centers, although there was just a natural worry that they're near me.
yeah,
Actually, there is still a way to win. There was an additional. The variant also just had the normal win condition of a solo, which is if you control half the centers on the map, you win. But that was not realistic and not the first thing that most people were aiming for. Most people were aiming for their victory condition, as
yeah.
they should. But
So
Ogos
because nobody knows
theoretically could
how
get.
big the map is.
Yeah, no one knows how big the map is. There seems to be a lot of powers, and yeah, and it's hard to control a ton of centers. But theoretically, Ogos could win if they controlled half the map, uh,
Yeah,
which is probably why they were just maximizing their center count.
it was quite interesting trying to guess how many players were in this variant.
Yeah, I don't remember. I think our early theories were something like 10 to 20 or like 12 to 20.
Yeah, that's a pretty big range.
Yeah.
So that's very very loose guess, but
Hmm.
I think it was in that range,
Yeah.
which is quite interesting. There was a couple powers you never interacted or even heard of at the end.
I think I heard of every power that didn't die early by the end. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah. But yes, there were powers that I never had gotten the name of because they just died really early.
yeah.
Which makes sense. I mean, like the equivalent of like a Usniji, although Usniji got to escape, but like if had Usniji not escaped and never gotten a fleet out, I would not be surprised for Kadaria to never learn who they are, for example.
Yeah.
Um,
By the way, I think that Sneezy is still roaming around even though you're taking a near
oh,
here.
Usniji is very much roaming around at this point.
Snoo is getting them to do some crazy stuff. From
Snoo
what
and
you
Tutu are
heard.
both getting them to nuke stuff, yeah, and they're causing a lot of impact on the board. I'm really looking forward to seeing Captain Meme's impact recap, where you're probably going to hear a lot more about the nukes and stuff that they were up to. But yeah, at this point they're not affecting my game. Another restriction on the nuke ability was that you can't nuke any tiles that you've already seen. So that's why that's why they haven't gotten revenge on me and nuked all of my home centers. Um,
Yeah.
I was actually very happy when they retreated to Anjay. When I was posing it as like, this is your way to peace out, that's true. But I was also happy to see them retreat to NJ or NK because it meant that they had now seen both of my remaining home centers and they couldn't nuke either of them.
Yeah. They
So
couldn't get rid of everything.
yeah, exactly. Because had they nuked Anvay, that would have been a real big problem for me long term.
Yeah. I should move on.
Yes.
So
I'm feeling much more confident in my position. It sucks that I can't build quickly, but I've consolidated this whole thing, and now I can actually like look to expand or do something else with my life that's not just fight Usniji. So
yeah, I
um,
think your thing is like, oof, finally that war's over. Time to go explore what's near
yeah,
me.
yeah, exactly. I can finally send the like exploration fleet I've been wanting to send around this whole game. So
Yeah.
obviously a fleet build. I
You
only have
want to
one
go to
fleet.
ASLC. That has not been seen before.
I don't even know if I do. I might just go to ASGY actually. No, I do. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm still support holding because I don't know where Snoo is, and they might be taking a UIL and Enco. Seems like they're not actually there at all.
And look at
Um,
that. You might have
Look
forgotten
at that.
about this, but Zach does have a second ability,
I
navigation.
do. Yes, our first deep sea of the game. What year is this now? 7, 6, something like that.
Yeah, like
Um,
I think 6.
6 probably. Yeah.
So
All
everyone
my
you've
neighbors
met,
also have navigation because navigation takes 3 years to spread. So
yeah,
everyone has navigation.
it,
Um,
it's a bit rough. Um, you do see Ushniji's last dot though. At least you
I
think,
do,
at least last dot.
unless they've taken one elsewhere. But yes,
Yeah, which is very interesting to see. But
yeah.
I
And I
think the
believe
deep
I'm
sea
talking
tile
to
is more interesting because
yes, deep sea
you've
tile's
been next to
cool.
a deep sea tile this whole time.
Yeah, and it's next to one of my cores. I believe I'm talking to Tuthu about taking Enko even this fall, and I believe we decide on Tuthu should take it. Because at this point, I'm feeling very comfortable. How many dots am I at? Like 9, 10?
Yeah.
Um,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah.
9. Okay. I'm feeling pretty comfortable. I think I'm gonna get my 12. At this point, I think Tutu's telling me that they're on like 6 in Warfuria or something, and they're like a higher center count than me, but they have less in Warfuria by a significant margin, and they're struggling in Warfuria because Salt has this incredible defensive power. They say. And I'm worried about that because at this point I'm planning for my win condition, and my win condition requires me to get Tutu to 12 or me to 6 in Warfuria. And I don't think that me getting to 6 is realistic. Tutu's around the same size as me, and I would rather just work with them because they've been treating me well.
You also don't know
Um,
where Warfuria is.
I also still don't. Well, I think at this point Tutu had probably told me a bit about it. I know it's in the north east. Uh,
Somewhere.
but I don't know anything more than that. Somewhere exactly. I don't know how
Yeah.
quickly I can get there. People were telling me I'm like 3.5 years away, like very far away, and I'm like, okay, well, there's no way I can get like one fleet there, but I'm never gonna be able to send a massive amount of units there.
Yeah.
Um, and then I moved to Ishiv, more just like scouting. I think this
Yeah.
wasn't. Oh, and also to set up a convoy, I believe. Yes.
Yeah. I think is this when you do try looking outwards for expansion routes?
Yeah. At this point, I'm not intending to stab Praya because I'm still more interested in fighting Oglos, and I know that if I kill Praya, I'm just going to be fighting Oglos. Um, and Praya's just fighting Oglos on the mainland, so like they're not bothering me at all. They basically have no fleets; they're never threatening me, so I'm happy. But I will be convoying armies over. I think with this issue of fleet was my idea, and
Yeah.
I believe that was just the spring phase we just had. At this point, I send Praya a message, and I'm like, "Hey, where would be the most useful place for me to have more armies? Would you rather me have push in from the north onto like IDGK, or would you rather me push in from the south and help you in that direction?" I'm not telling them that I'm in a position to convoy because I'm worried that they'll freak out and like back off of Ogos and like cover IPLH and stuff. Where I'm not intending to stab them, but I don't want them to do defensive moves because I want them to help keep pressuring Ogos. So I'm not telling them that I obviously have a Shiv and stuff here, but I am saying, basically I'm asking them, without telling them, I'm asking them, would you rather I convoy into IPLL or IPWP here?
Yeah.
And they tell me the south, so I convoy into IPWP. The rest of my moves are pretty self-explanatory. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just.
Just a lot of moving around. Not really anything important. I think you moved to Angie
Oh,
just to color it in.
yeah. No, there was tactical reasons for that one. It was to cover AUIL if someone walked in, so I could support myself back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Makes
it's also the
sense.
fastest way to get to AUIL if I want to keep the convoy chain going. I explore with ANEV because I still thought exploring was like somewhat useful at this point, and I wanted to stay in ANEV for the vision more than anything else. Like it's just a very good defensive posture position, and I know that SNU can use their ability to snipe Anve whenever they want to, which is really saddening to me, especially because I had just stabbed it from them the previous phase.
Yeah.
Um, I moved back to INWW. I had never actually mentioned why I had moved to IEKT in the first place, which is that I had a conversation with Oglos and they had moved their fleet. If you look like back up the few phases, they had moved a fleet to IDFG and then they moved it to INRU, and then they were going to move it up to. I was worried they would move it up to IEKT and like start pressuring me.
Yeah.
So I asked them to move out to a C tile instead, and I was going to cover IEKT. So I did that,
Which they obliged.
and they obliged. Yeah, and then I moved back to my defensive posture in INWW, and I do my convoy, and yeah. And now I learned something very interesting. We are at the edge of the map.
Yeah.
We're on the western edge of the map. I had
Yeah.
previously seen the square end. I hadn't really thought a ton of it because it's like there could still be another C tile there. But nope, this is confirmation, and Snoo is very much lying. We get Tuthu taking Anko here, like we expected.
Yeah. It turns out
And
Snoo doesn't actually live in Anko.
yeah, no, they do not live in Anko. Um, and we see this ASFO as well. That
Yeah.
made me feel right about what I was covering because Snoo could have walked into one of my dots at some point.
Yeah.
Because that was the end of the spring resolution, I believe.
I think
Maybe
Tuthu
not.
walked into Anko as well this fall.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. Oh, this is the fall. Correct,
Yeah.
yeah.
You didn't get anything this fall. This is just more of
Nope.
positioning,
But I
post-war
believe I also
positioning.
still had some leftover builds anyways, so.
Yes.
That's also why I didn't just convoy into Praya. I mean, I didn't want to stab Praya immediately or anything like that, but even though I had the option to convoy into a dot, I chose not to.
It's also just positioning. You've got it to do so.
Yeah.
should we move on to the next phase here?
Sure. So we have winter decisions here.
Oh,
Oh,
no.
yeah.
This is my map. I made this.
Yeah. So we were discussing, like, I was compiling all the information I was getting from different powers about where people were. At this point, I had a pretty good idea, and this is kind of what the map looked like.
Yeah. And so this is this is obviously not where Douglar.
Phosphor actually was. Yeah.
Yeah, this is where
Or not, Douglar. Yeah.
Douglar. Yeah, Douglar was somewhere around here. This is the important center. Um, these little purple bits, were Schnoo.
New. Okay.
Yeah,
Actually, I will say I do know. I think this was around when I was getting all this information from Douglar about East Icos and everything like that, and also from the new Bospor, because I'm pretty sure I got all that information and then we used that to help make this map. So around now is when I was learning all that stuff.
yeah, and uh, Kadaria. I don't think I spelled that right, but
You did not know.
that Snoo was saying that they were being attacked down here
Yeah.
by them,
Hmm.
which was interesting.
I also knew Kadaria was pushing in on this bottom of this continent where Praia and Oglos were. I knew that they were like fighting Oglos and yeah, and helping Praia.
Yeah, and Flaula. I think this is the first time mentioning
Yes.
them, but they have been said quite a bit. I think.
Yes, Fala was another one who's doing well. They were allied with Meme, from my understanding.
Yeah,
Um,
against Bospor,
yes.
because Bospor's pretty much dead at this point.
Yes, Bospor is basically dead at this point. Douglar's also basically dead. I know,
Yeah,
yeah, Douglar.
yeah. But this is generally what like I understood from my. I wasn't following too much at near the end of this game. Like
Mhm.
I wasn't reading all the press anymore, but
No, and
it's
the
a
press was going relatively slow as well. This was a 4-day per normal phase, 2-day per retreat phase game, which is around double what a lot of people are used to. So it was a bit of a slower game, and also because there's so few units and so few powers, there's not that many orders. So in general, the pace was very slow, but it was meant to be because adjudication for this game is so difficult because you have to make a map for each different player.
yeah,
It's a lot of effort, so it was more for the administrator side than it was, or like the GM side than it was for the players, which led to like, I mean, generally diplomacy games had the issue of like interest being lost over time, but I mean the game went for around I think 4.5 months by the end, because of the
maybe
long
even
phases, and
like
yeah,
5.5 or something. It was very
yeah,
long.
it went for a really long time, and player interest tends to wane and press tends to go lower as well, and especially because I was actually doing a lot of press at this time, and also like in the earlier phase when I was worried more about Snoo choosing to side at Usneji, but we're coming after like a 2 to 3 year phase where I was just fighting Usneji and doing tactics each phase, and there wasn't really a whole lot of press during that section.
Yeah, not really. This is mostly just tactics and cool new little tidbits of discovery.
Yeah, there's less to press about than a whole map variant where you can see everything because you just don't see things that are happening on the other side of the map. So even if you have opinions on them, you just don't know that they're happening. So
Yeah, still talking with Tuthu about trying to get them to the
yeah,
victory.
at this point, I'm basically asking Tuthu every phase, like, how many Warfury dots are you on? How many dots are you on total?
Yeah.
How can I help you? How can I help you? It's kind of the,
Yeah. I think at
you want
that
to go great. Yeah.
yeah. I think now's the time when you build. You've got more fleets. You can
Yeah, I got fleets. I still feel like I have enough armies, and I want to now get to Warfuria and start helping Tuthu. I
yeah.
also want to be able to defend all of the sea tiles around my islands, not necessarily stand in all of them, but basically, like, I want to be able to see a fleet coming. Because at this point, if no one can have a fleet near me without me knowing about it, then no one can get an army, obviously. They can't convoy. So it's a more unit efficient way to both see a lot of things and cover everything. So I
Yeah.
don't necessarily need an army sitting in ANEV anymore. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then the moves are
Yeah, so I have a lot of choices here. I could obviously stab Pariah here. That's like a very obvious choice. Potentially, I could like convoy into IPLH and support myself in.
yeah.
Um,
Do you know where
but I
Oglos
actually
is at this point? Like where the front line is?
I don't, but I do know that IDJK is empty and there's an army in NLG, which means that it seems like Oglis is pushing forward. And I am asking Pry for a lot of information, and they're giving it to me willingly. So I have like a decent amount of information about where exactly all the units are between Pry and Oglos. And at this point, I believe Pry invites me. I don't know if I tell Pry. I might tell Pry. I think I do tell Pry actually that I had convoyed an army at this point into IPWP, and I ask if they would like me to go into INCV, and I believe they say yes, and that's why I do that.
I don't think you do. I don't remember
Oh,
that.
maybe I just ask them for all the information and I just walk into INCV.
Yeah,
I don't
I
remember.
think that's what happens because I remember them being
Okay,
like,
maybe that is what I
"Oh,
do. Yeah, that actually makes
why are
sense.
you here?" And you
Yeah,
say, "Oh yeah, I didn't stab you last turn, so you can trust me. I've had my
yep,
army here for a little bit."
yeah, yeah. You're right. That's a really interesting conversation that happens. Yes, so you're right. I didn't tell them I wanted the move to INCV to succeed, and I also wanted the backfill convoy to succeed. But I'm also not. I actually don't necessarily even want to stab Praya, even when I'm doing this. I
Uh-huh.
kind of want to treat Praya as like a small power vassal sort of thing to help me against Oglos and Kadaria, who I know are in this region.
Yeah, and then stab them
So I can
once
just keep
Oglos isn't an issue.
potentially, yeah, or I don't even necessarily need it because I'm knowing at this point I only need to get to 12 centers, and then I just want kind of stability. So I'm fine not having to invest a lot in this in general. As long as I'm not worried about them coming after me or like building fleets or anything, I'm happy.
Yeah,
I just need to get 12 centers in this area, and then it seems like my big issue is going to be sending a bunch of fleets to Warfuria to get meme to their 12.
yeah. Because aren't they saying they're like at? They say they're at like 8 right now or
I
something.
think their overall dot count was still higher than me at this point. Like they had like 5 or 6 Icos Aquilia dots, and then also like 6 Warfuria dots. So they're at like 11, 12, something like that. There's a point at which they get up to like 14 or 15. I don't remember, but they're doing
Yeah,
pretty well. The
I've
problem is
been
they're not
like
doing.
8 with Furia.
Oh, they're not that high. No,
No,
they
okay,
were like 6 at this point. Warfuria, yeah,
so not doing too great.
no.
Let's look at the next
Also
thing.
around this point where Snoo is trying to start pushing like anti-meme, and like Tuthu is starting to become like the board leading threat, or at least one of them. It was Kadaria, Oglos, Tuthu, Flala, uh, like the big four. Am
Yeah,
I missing someone?
you.
Yeah. No, actually, I was never included. At least as far as I don't know how other powers are talking about, but I was intentionally being like, yeah, I'm a mid-level power. I struggled a lot because Usniji was all-inning me. I'm at like 7-ish centers. Um, like I
Yeah,
did well enough to survive, but I'm not in contention for the win. I did talk a bit to Praya, and we shared like our traits with each other. I later learned that Praya had lied, and I did not share my exploration trait. I just said that I was the one who started with navigation, which was half true. Um, and we shared our victory conditions. And what I was telling people, I very rarely shared my victory condition, but when I did, which I think was only with Snoo and with Praya, I would say it was to get to 18 centers and to eliminate someone, which is again half true, because I would need to get 12 and then 6 from Warfuria, which is basically eliminating meme. But the fact that I was saying, yeah, I need 18 centers, and the reason I was saying that a half truth is because if they had ever dislodged one of my units, they would still be able to say, I would still be able to say, yeah, I didn't tell you the entire truth, but like I wasn't explicitly lying to you either.
yeah,
But I need to eliminate meme and get to 18. But the fact that I was saying I need 18 centers and I'm at 7, I'm not one of the people who's fighting for a win here,
yeah. That makes
which was not
sense.
true. Although people are also framing it as like at this point as like Kadaria might win every single year, or like Flala might win at the end of
Yeah,
every single year. And from
there's
what
a
I hear,
crazy
it
amount.
might have been possible at some points, but because of that, it's like I'm like at least 5 years away from a win or something. So they're
Yeah.
not really worried about me.
Alrighty. Let's look at the
Yeah.
next phase here.
I also don't think most people even really knew I existed or cared much, or like I don't know. I'm very much in my own corner of the map. Like I don't know how much Flala cared about my existence or Kadaria really cared about my existence.
Yeah, because you've only been on this little island here.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. So it's not like I'm affecting their games really.
it's a relatively center dense island, but not really
Yeah, I mean it has 2
much.
powers starting on it, but yeah.
You
Okay.
convoyed to.
IPWP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, you found out that there's another deep sea tile.
Yep. And I see Snoo teleport across it for the first time.
Yeah, they just disappeared.
Yep. which makes me very happy because it means Snoo's not trying to stay involved with me, which is good.
Yeah. And
I get my second convoy off. I'm very happy about that. Now I'm explaining my plan to Priya of like, hey, I just want to like walk through into INDR and like help you. They seem a bit disturbed by the fact that I have an army here. I don't know if I admit the fact that I have a second army, but I do. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I don't blame them, to be honest.
I'd be surprised.
I'd be incredibly concerned.
Yeah, I think my attitude here was like kind of just both a mix of, hey, I haven't stabbed you. I was able to convoy directly into IPLH and I didn't. I was able last turn to walk into IPLH or INFI and I didn't, and you know that as well. So like I think you can trust I'm not trying to stab you here. I don't know if they knew that I already had landed a second army. They probably didn't,
You're
and I don't know
definitely
if they'd guessed
getting
that.
into a good position to do so, is the thing.
Sure, but also I think their position is, I mean, this is all the 4 dots they have on the map, and they're fighting Oglos. They're potentially getting a 5th dot somewhere else from Kadaria being supporting them in or something, but they can't fight me here, right? So it's like they don't
Yeah.
really have an option to turn around, I think, because then Oglos is just going to kill them.
Yeah. Not much to
Um,
discuss here. Do you want to go to the next
yeah, and
turn,
even at
or
this point, I was
like,
intending not to stab them this spring phase.
yeah, but it's now
But something
fall, right?
something impactful happens actually between this fall. I don't. Do you have the spring retreats for this? Is that your next map? Let's see if you move to the next map.
It's
You do have the
build.
spring retreats. This happens, and this is very impactful to me. You'll notice Priya builds in IPLH. There's a few things about this build. So how is the country building in the spring retreats phase? Well, they had taken a center off of Oglos that Kadaria had supported them into and gone up to 5 dots. And because they had taken it in the spring, they were allowed to immediately build. And I actually didn't know until this point that's actually how Oglos's ability worked. That the builds and disbands happen instantly. And this was very concerning because they had told me about like, oh, they're going to work with Kadaria like the last fall and like that they'd get into a center, but they hadn't told me that they were getting a build here. And then in the entirety of spring retreats, they didn't tell me that they were considering a build or whatever, and that they instantly built this build in Army and IPLH. And the pro me build in this position is the Army in INGC, and it's what I would have pushed them for. But not only had they not told me that they're getting a build, they also built like anti-me, I guess, between their options. And
Yeah.
that was very concerning to me because that meant, okay, they don't trust me because I have an Army 9 CV, which is kind of fair. But again, I don't think they can afford not to trust me here because my path forward requires them to trust me. Like they need to like have me walking through INDR. Like that is my only growth path here. I have 2 growth paths, which is either push into Oglos and Kadaria, walking through Priya's centers and them letting me do it basically, but not actually taking their centers. Or I just stab Priya, right? That's the easy option. That's the option I'm avoiding. But if they have high trust, they can let me walk through and push onto these other powers. But if they're not trusting me, then that falls apart, and I'm basically not going to be able to grow. Besides stabbing them,
Yeah. And uh, how did they build in the spring here? Anyways, I think
because they took the Oglos center. That's why.
Oh, so they lose it in spring as well. I see.
Yes, so you disband or you build in the spring, which I didn't understand until this actually happened.
That's interesting.
Um, it
Okay.
is interesting. Um, but yeah, this was like very much changed my opinion because beforehand I was like, I'll be in position to stab Priya, but I don't think it's good. And now it's like, oh, I have to stab Priya soon because they don't trust me. Number one. Number two, my growth is entirely based on them trusting me or stabbing them. And then 3 is they're building this relationship up with Gadaria, and I'm very worried that they're going to become a minor power / vassal to Gadaria, as opposed to me. And I really want them to stay in this relationship with me where they help me out.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, and also there's also this like lingering thought of like they got yellow to nuke my home center, so uh,
True. There is that Cassis Belli. It's like, finally, after 3 real life months, I can get my revenge. Putting me in this terrible position in the first place.
yeah, it's less about revenge and it's more like justification.
Yeah.
Of like I think if I stab them, I'll have more of an ability to say, hey, you nuked my supply center, like now we're even, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Let's see
yeah.
the stab.
Seafall, yeah. So I do end up actually going through the stab. I'm even debating whether or not I should do it this phase.
Oh yeah.
Another reason I do it this phase is I think that because they don't trust me, I think that the tactics are just going to get worse over time. I mean, they're building this year. They just went up to 5. They might be getting more and becoming bigger. The other reason I go for the stab immediately is I actually think both of their armies are force disbanded here. That was wrong. Both of their armies are not force disbanded here. IPLH actually has a retreat into INCV that I missed. But
Ooh,
if both of the armies in IPLH and IPSH were force disbanded here, this obviously becomes much better as a stab as well.
yeah. Also, Oglis supported you in.
Yes,
It's
I had asked them
interesting.
to, and they did, and I was very happy. One of the things I was most worried about during this phase is Oglis actually going to support me in. But I don't think they have a lot of reasons not to at this point. I've kept my word to them in every case, and I'm offering to stab the person that they're at war with. So
Yeah.
uh,
I like how they had to take a shot in the dark to support you too. So that's
yeah,
fun.
I just tell them this is what you should. Yeah,
This is the tile you have no idea about. That'd be risky. That'd be very interesting being on the other side of that. You have to support into a tile, but you don't know what the name is.
yeah. I mean, it's not super risky, right? Because they're supporting INCV into IPSH. So all they know is they're supporting some unit into IPSH. It's not like they're supporting against themselves or something. Like
Yeah,
worst case would just be INLG holds, but that's fine with them. They don't lose anything. The other thing is I'm dislodging a prior unit here, so I learned their trait and victory condition. I learned that they lied to me about their trait. Um, their trait has a bunch of details to it, but the most important part is that it means that their armies can support hold, and the support holds will not be cut unless they are dislodged. Meaning that usually if you move a unit to where a unit is supporting something, it will cancel the support order or treat it like it doesn't work. But in this case, that cannot happen unless that unit is itself supported into and displaced, which makes their defensive tactics basically always act as if they had one additional unit, and they're very difficult to deal with.
yeah. Here's you do actually get some vision to the east there with that move tab.
Yes, I'm sending my exploratory fleet outwards to the east. I
Oh,
learned that Oglis is taking this ISDI dot, and they're in WIS.
should probably explain that. That's Toothy's power, right?
Yes, Tooth's power allows them to create a center whenever they interact with whenever they find a continent for the first time, and this is where Tuthu found Icos for the first time.
Yeah. So you got a new dot that you didn't know about. That's right next to you as well.
I probably had heard about it from Tuthu at this point. I don't remember. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. The retreat there, disband. And now it is the next year, right? You
Yes,
build 2 fleets again.
I do. The logic of this is I want to get to Warfuria.
Yep.
I still have 2 armies coming in the next year to Praia, and I feel like 5 armies in total is enough for now. I considered building 1 army and 1 fleet, but I think I still just went with the 2 fleets. I believe also this year Tuthu offers me Anko because Tuthu is doing really well at this point. So this is around when, if not, I think it was around this year where Tuthu board leader talk starts happening. They go up to around 14 or 15, or like I think 14, and they're telling me that they have 8 or 9 more Furia dots. Um, and again, around like 5 Aquilia Icos dots. Um,
Which is nearly enough for their victory condition.
yes. And I'm also with the Sab on Praia basically at my victory condition. I'm at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I'm currently at 11 dots. Anko would be enough. I also know I'm probably going to take INFI this year,
Yeah, and you asked
which
the
will put me at 13.
GM if because your victory condition and Toothy's victory condition are basically the same. Just swap the names
Yes.
around and the continents around.
Yes.
They have to get 12 on Refuria, plus have you at 12 on Icos and Aqualia, or have 6 themselves on Aqualia or Icos.
Yes.
Um, so if they have 6 on Aqualia and Icos and 12 in Wifuria, they win.
Mm.
And when you ask the GM about like, do they win solo without me if they reach that, um, that is in fact how that works.
Yeah, specifically if they can, if they succeed in having both the duo condition and the solo condition. So if they succeed in both of their win conditions, it is counted as a single win. And even if I succeed in both of my conditions, it is not counted as a two-way win.
Yeah,
So the solo overrides. And that was I didn't actually quite ask that here. I think that was around a year from now. But that was a very impactful and surprising thing, because I guess I wouldn't have thought it would work that way. I would think if two players both reach their win conditions, both of those players win. Um, but because that doesn't work that way, it's going to start informing some of my decisions of, okay, I need to more proactively prevent them reaching their solo win condition, because if I don't, they'll just take the solo win, even if they're generally good-natured about like trying to do a win with me.
yeah, which is
Um,
a fair thing to worry about. Is there
yeah.
tactics you want to discuss down in Icos?
Yeah, the tactics here are actually super interesting. I can't remember everything off the top of my head, but I can do a little bit. So because I know that the support hold works regardless of how regardless of whether or not I cut it, the major topic in general, even when I had been supported into IPSH, is I had offered Oglos support into INGC. So I was going to fulfill that. Um, I asked them if they might want to do something else tactically because it might be better because I might just get cut. But they were like, no, they want support into INGC. So I was like, okay, cool. I'll support you into INGC. I wanted to backfill INLG, and there was a lot of conversations about this INLG backfill. They did not want me in INLG, which I found kind of surprising because I was in INLG previously with them there in that region, and I just walked up to INWW. I've never caused them any strife. I've never tried to tap IDJK, despite being able to on many phases. And I had just stabbed Praya, so obviously I'm going to work with them against Praya. But they really did not want me in INLJ, or INLG. And I was a bit worried about this. I wanted to tap it anyway because you'll notice, I mean, between them and Praya, they have 3 units on IPSH, and I had just stabbed Praya, and I think the very obvious thing for Praya to do is go and vassalize either Kadaria or Oglis or both and say, I just want to kill Eshil with everything I can.
Yeah,
So I thought, okay, they're getting support into INLG or they're supporting Praya into INLG. I don't think I have an option here but to tap INLG because that removes a lot of my tactical options here if I'm getting stabbed. So I think I kind of have to as a defensive move, and they see it as aggressive towards them, me moving into INLG. So our relationship soured a little bit over this point. In terms of the ISDI stuff, I asked them for permission to move to DUS, and I was happy with them to cover ISDI, and that's what we ended up just doing.
US, where's that?
Oh, the fleet's up at the top.
Oh,
It's the
Dwiss.
deep sea tile.
I
Yeah,
see.
DUS. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. That
Um,
I'm
no, you're good.
yeah.
In terms of looking at the Praya home tactics, I think I'm pretty sure I know what I did here, which is I want to convoy over the 2 armies, and the only way to do that is convoy Ango to IPWP and convoy AUIL to INFI. So I'm pretty sure that's just what I do. Um,
Yeah. Let's see.
and I probably support myself in. I did not support myself in. I held myself. Okay, that makes sense too. Yeah.
Yeah, you tried to support Oglos into INGC.
Yes, and you notice they do not take my support. They did not want to walk out of INLG and let me in, which surprised me again a bit. It would have got cut anyway. Actually, no, it wouldn't have, because INGC was the one moving.
Yeah.
So they chose not to take INGC.
They did not trust you.
Oh, that was negotiated. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. I expected them to do that. I was fine with it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because I wanted to walk into DOS anyway, and I also move into ASBP, and I'm exploring. This is also the year where Tuthu tells me that I can go ahead and take Anko, because again, this is like their height of their solo threat. So I go ahead and say, okay, I'll take Anko.
Yeah.
That's the nuked island up there. Yeah. And I meet a new power. I meet Flala. We have very minimal press, both when
Oh,
we first meet and just really for the rest of the
nice.
game. This yellow power over here is Flala. They're doing really well. Uh, yeah, I know that they're far to the east. They don't really share a whole lot with me. We don't really have much conversation in general. I knew that they were Meme's ally, but they're now fighting Meme because Meme is board leader and scary, and everyone wants to kill meme, which I'm not very happy about. But yeah,
Yeah. And this is with sword. This fleet with sword. That is
Snu.
Snow. Yes. They're over here as well.
Yeah. They're fighting meme with Flala.
Yeah.
And I know Warfuria is to the east of them. I'm also realizing now that I'm much closer to Warfuria than I thought I was,
Yeah.
because I'm
This.
talking to meme and I see yeah, my first Warfuria tiles, and everyone was telling me it's like 3.5 years away, but it's like more like 1.5, 2 years. Um, so
Yeah, like 2.5, something like that.
so I'm like, oh, okay, this isn't as far as I thought, and I was already sending fleets east, so maybe I can
Yeah.
actually send ASBP over and like help more.
Yeah.
I'm also just really happy with how tactics went with Praya. This is ideal scenario that I got both the convoys off with
Yeah.
1 strength.
And you didn't lose IPS.
Yep. I was a bit surprised to see Praya just support into IPSH because I think it's very easy for me to cover it. The only other order I was considering was supporting IPSH into INCV, I remember.
You do see
But
that Riot does actually have a fleet over here.
yes, I knew that they had because I was communicating with Oglos and I knew all the dots that all the units that Praya had. And I was talking about like which ones they had disbanded. I knew that they had an army in INUV at the beginning of this year as well, and that's the one that they ended up disbanding. Or not, maybe it wasn't INUV, but they had another army that was near Oglos that they had disbanded. And that was also leading me to believe this, like, okay, they're vassalizing to Oglos stuff, which clearly is what they did. And they also rotated this fleet around against me, which was kind of annoying, but can't really do a whole lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I see that they can put 2 on INFI. I'm just going to support hold myself. I want to push out INCV and get myself in there, while making sure I don't lose IPSH.
Oh,
IPSH
they
here.
did miss this tile, but it shows up later. There was a whole map specifically for it.
Yeah, it was just neutral. No one had ever walked into it, and
Yeah.
it wasn't to center.
Yeah. I guess.
I'm also talking to Meme. What can I help? How can I help you? Meme offers to support me into WSSH, so I'm going to take that support.
Yeah.
Um,
First
and just help out
interaction
Meme.
with
Yeah,
Flala. Just punched in the
both to help out.
face.
Yeah, it's both to help out Tutu, and also I just want to keep seeing what's going on in Warfuria, and yeah.
Yeah.
Because up until this point, everything I'm relying on is stuff that Snoo has told me and stuff that Meme has told me.
I'll see it with your own eyes.
Yeah. But I do believe Meme is playing for the duo. I mean, offering me Anko is a very good move to that point, because like he's not going to be offering me center transitions or leaving all of his centers above me unguarded if he's actually playing for solo, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling pretty comfortable.
ASFR is also one of those trade
Yes.
markets, I think is what they're called. Like little trade
Hmm.
markets that Tuthu makes whenever he discovers a continent. I think this is the one that for
Yep.
I don't know, Aqualia?
Aquilia.
Aqualia, okay.
Yeah.
So that is pretty interesting. You've
Yep.
got a decent amount of 2-3 dots above you.
Yep. And then we move to the fall. Not a whole lot of surprises here. I do cover ICSC because I think that Oglis is going to stab me. Oglis does stab me. Um,
Oh yeah.
Things work out for me though. I'm honestly very surprised that Oglis did stab me in such a way where they used a support with INLG, because I thought it was pretty clear I was going to tap INLG again. So I did, and the support didn't work. Had they supported INLG into IPSH, it would have worked, I believe, and Oglis would have gotten IPSH. But I assume it was something about Praya not being willing to do that or something. I don't know. Or Praya wants their home centers back and not being a pure vassal. The rest of my moves down to the east, I tap IPSB and I tap INCV, so INFI is completely safe, while also being able to push INCV out. And then I'm doing this like fun thing where I'm moving into IPSH and then backfilling IPLH, because this actually covers all of those centers, but I expect it to all bounce.
Yeah. He's covering all the retreats this time.
Yes, I'm covering all the retreats. So this order set is actually very defensively secure. The only thing it would fail against would be something like an INGC supports INLG to IPSH. I don't think I had a way to cover that.
Yeah.
And in that case, I would get into INLG as well, so it's not the end of the world.
I think
I would
if
also just go neutral anyway, because
yeah,
I'm taking INFI. Yeah.
I think INFI supporting IPSH to INCV would have been the way to stop that, right?
I actually, sorry, yeah, I actually do support IPSH and INCV. It's just not shown on the map because I guess it ended up being irrelevant. The GMs didn't want to show it, but I did do that support. That's what IFI is doing here.
Okay, yeah.
It still wouldn't have solved what I'm talking about, which is INLG to IPSH supported by INGC. So INLG to IPSH
I
supported
see.
by
I see.
INGC. Yeah,
Sorry.
I'm not putting too strength on that. So
Wow, these names are really hard to follow.
yeah,
I
I'm very comfortable with them because I've written so many tactics about them. But even then, I'd have to double check the map a lot of times just to
yeah, I think I know now
not make a typo.
why people don't like them too much. In my first variant I made, they've got the shortened names, and that tends to be an issue I've noticed. So I'm gonna try to avoid that from now on, because I can see the issues. See it.
I think they were kind of cool, but yeah, there's also some issues. It doesn't show it on the map, but I did actually get the support from meme into WSSH there, so I'm going to get in, and I'm actually going to dislodge Flala in the process
Yeah,
and see my first Warfury dots.
yeah.
Um,
A bull and Winova,
I
which
also end up learning Flawless trait and victory condition here. Um, and Flawless victory condition is very scary, so I understand why a lot of people are worried about them. It's something like reach 13 centers and have met a power on every place. And meeting a power on every continent is very easy, and they've already done it.
yeah, I
In
think
fact,
I think you were the last person, right? So
no, they'd already met someone. I think
oh, probably a Sneegee on their little
it's Snitchy,
voyage
yeah,
across the world.
yeah, yeah, they'd already met me. Yeah, and even I'm very close to having met someone on every continent at this point. So like, I just need to meet Kardaria. So very easy on that side, and then it was just 13 centers. And compared to most people's victory conditions, those are very, very easy things to reach. So if they ever hit 13 centers, basically they would just instantly win the game. So I see why people are worried about them. By the point that I'm meeting them, they're very much falling from grace. Tutu has managed to overwhelm them for the most part, and they're falling down to a smaller power.
Yeah, and it looks like Snoo is just trying to vacate the area a little bit.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. And you see 4 Tutu fleets, so it seems like Tutu is doing as well in Warfare as they've been saying.
Yeah.
So with this, I believe Tutu says that they've officially gotten up to 9 Warfare dots and only needs 3 more.
Ooh,
I'm very happy to hear that.
interesting thing.
Mhm.
Oglos moved to INDR, so I think Inkiv is
Yes,
force disbanded.
it is, and I'm very happy about that as well. Although it really wouldn't have had a retreat towards me anyway, it would have just been towards INDR, and I'm also okay with that because they'd have to disband anyway.
Yeah.
What other things are interesting about this map?
Uh,
I'm just really happy about my position. It's pretty good.
you get builds now.
Yeah, I get builds, 2 more fleets, gonna send them to Warfaria. Considered 1 army to send it to Icos, but at this point, Icos doesn't matter. I'm at 13 dots. I don't need more dots. I really need more dots, I can just get them from these uh, Aquilia dots. This is also when I had talked to the GMs about the solo duo thing with Meme. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'm gonna have to push some of these Aquilia dots because Meme is clearly doing so well. He's on 9 in Warfuria and has like at least 5 dots in Icos Aquilia, or at least 4, maybe 5. Because I know that there's an island north of Asme here, so, or ASME, that you can see. There's an island
Yes,
there.
this one.
I know he has this ASFR dot. I know he has an PR, and I know he has that island, yeah, that you were just running over as well. So there's 4 Aquilia dots right there. I also have been talking to One Center Bosper, and One Center Bosper has told me that Meme has and Ogos has also told me that Meme has a One Center colony in between Ogos and One Center Bosper. Somewhere in East Icos. Yeah,
Somewhere
somewhere
around here.
around there.
Speaking of
Exactly.
Bosper,
hmm
well, Bull is a Bosper. I don't know why the resolution's
I
so
actually didn't even
low.
notice that during the game. I just noticed that now. Cool.
Yeah, well, Bull is an Oglos core, so I think that
Or not Ogos core, a Bosper core. Yeah.
Bosper, yes, sorry, they by convoyed through this
hmm
path to get to where you are.
Which that's a pretty big convoy. That's pretty wild.
Yeah,
Maybe they also just convoyed over from East Icos because they also had a colony over there. I don't know,
yeah,
but
probably.
something. Yeah, because that's a pretty long convoy. That's 3 fleets at least. Um, which they probably couldn't have afforded with how poorly they were doing. Um, Anything else? Let's see. Yeah, but I'm worried about Meme potentially soloing this. So I'm potentially wanting to take Aquilia dots off of them because they could be at 5 Aquilia Icos dots, and if they hit 6, it's over. Um, and yeah, I assume that Meme will take the solo win if they can.
Yeah,
So I'm building these fleets both to help Warfree and also control this area. And then it's just tactics against Oglos at this point. Praya had to take one off. I actually asked Oglos to ask Praya, because I knew Praya was an Oglos vassal at this point, to disband the fleet instead of the army. I did this for two reasons. One is because, yeah, it's better for me. And it's not just better for me, but it's also better for DMZing between Oglos and me. I looked at two different order sets I'd have to do. And one of the major things is now I have to tap INDR because the fleet was kept on. Because I need to stop them I have to send INCV to INDR to stop attacks into INFI. And that makes DMZing harder than if they had kept the army, in which case I can send INFI, or I don't even have to necessarily send INFI into INCV. I have other options that don't involve tapping one of their units. But now I
Yeah.
have to tap INDR. So I asked them to take the fleet off. I was like, hey, it's better for us to DMZ between us. I can defend either way, which is true. Like I told Praya previously, I can defend either way. And even like I told Usniji, like I've told all three of these powers at one point, I can defend either way. Choose the less aggressive option towards me, and we can work something out. Every single time it hasn't worked out, sadly. And they've chosen the more aggressive option. I didn't mention that too much, but also I had offered Praya a chance to live and peace out. Like had they kept their units further away from me, like the ones that they were using to contest Kadaria and Oglos, I would have kept them alive as a small center power, because I only really cared to keep the three centers you currently see me in.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd offered INGC to Oglos already, and I didn't anything further than that. I didn't really care too much to have because I'm already at my 13. Um, but yeah. Let's see what else. So, and the other reason, sorry, to backtrack, I said, yeah, it's easier to DMZ between Ogos and it's better for me because the fleet is a bit more annoying. But the last reason is I wanted to see if Ogos would tell their vassal to do that. Because if Ogos is telling their vassal to do that, that means I can probably trust them. If they're not doing it, then maybe I can't trust Ogos as much. Because I'm also trying to work out a peace deal with Ogos at this point where it's like, hey, you're not getting anything else from me. You're going to get INGC like we originally agreed. How about you just take INGC and like go focus Kadaria or fight someone else? I don't care. Just not me. Um,
Makes sense.
which,
It's,
yeah, seems very convincing when you see I have a bunch of armies nearby. So
should we see
we now move
some?
to spring, yeah. So a bunch of tactics I can talk about here. I'm tapping INLG again, as
It's
per
like the
usual.
font changed all of a sudden.
Yeah, the font did change. That's funky. I move into
Oh,
IPSH.
it's high resolution again too. Yay.
Yeah, I tap. Yeah, there were various different GMs who were rotating between doing the adjudication. So
Yeah.
um, INCV, that's also part of the confusion with the different fog rules and stuff like that. INCV goes to INDR, just a safety tap for INFI. And I like this move I do here, which is instead of just holding INFI or something, I realized they can only put strength 1 on INFI, so I actually send it down to INSP, and I backfill. And then I
Yeah.
also send my fleets to both backfill, not expecting the fleets to get in, but more to safety tap. But I guess Praya in desperation hopes to find a center out in the wild, and does not.
Yeah, they
There's nothing there.
probably didn't
They're dead
have
now.
like any vision over here.
Yeah, and Oglis moves into INGC. So yeah, they probably had never moved into that state tile.
Noglos moved out of INLG. Well,
Oh, did they? Yeah, they did. That's right. I forgot they did that. They cover IDJK here because I could move into IDJK. They were worried I was going to dot them from IDJK.
it's interesting you don't
Uh,
have vision on it, but
I should have vision on it, but it's empty. There's nothing there.
yeah. Up here you
Other
move
things,
into that dot.
yeah.
Beam's
Uh,
moving towards you, it seems.
I asked that. I asked for that. Oh yeah, I can talk a bit about the north moves. Meme considered this a stab. It's kind of a stab. I did not ask for permission to take INFR. Or is that INPR? INPR.
Yeah, the
But again, I'm
ANPR, yeah.
operating at this point from the standpoint of, hey, I just want you to not solo win. Like I'll help you however I can in Morfuria. I end up moving south here because they asked me to loop around south. I should have just walked into WSLO. I wasn't sure that's what they wanted me to do, but it seems like it is what they wanted me to do. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
they supported me. I didn't realize that they wanted me to do that because I just moved into the other southern tile because I thought they were going to go there. But yeah, I'm asking them to move down to ASWS, both so that they don't bounce ANPR, because I know that they have a fleet in this trade center that isn't shown on the map right now for some reason.
Yeah.
They have a fleet there, and it's moving. And they also have a fleet in the island right next to it, and that's moving down to ASWS.
Yeah.
So the island is actually the one moving down to ASWS. But I'm just like, hey, yeah, I know you have 5 dots. You can easily get a 6th dot from East Icos that I don't know about, for example, or whatever. I just don't want you to solo. It looks like between the two of us, we have at least 25 units or something. So we're going to very dominantly crush Warfuria at this point. I don't think that they can organize a coalition in a fog of war game that can deal with two duo committed powers that can win together that have are probably the two of the largest powers on the map, if not the two largest powers on the map. So I'm very confident we can just get Warfuria at this point. But I just want to make sure you don't solo out of it. And I think that was my attitude. They took it worse than I thought they were going to take it, honestly, but ultimately seemed to come around a bit. I'm trying to think. Let's see. Other tactical things that are interesting here is that because of the way that the moves panned out with Oglos, and this is the first time I remembered the way that their power works, their units disband if there's 3 adjacent units. And because of the things that happened, yeah, INGC and INDR are both guaranteed to disband here.
Yeah.
So my position suddenly looks amazing against Oglos. And I calculate that I would actually go +4 by the end of this year. Because I would take INGC, I would take INWO, because this new power I just met. Well, first of all, I can support myself, but the new power has also offered me support. And I'll talk about that in a second. And I'm taking ANPR, which puts me at 3. And then I have a chance at INUV if I want it for 4. And I also have a dot above me that I can also take in the north. So I guess I can even go +5 if I really want to. Yeah, this one, ANSC, which I don't, or I can support myself into ASFR. Either way. But I don't really want to do any of that. I would probably just be happy with a +3 and I build 2 again and not step 2 through.
Yeah, you only have 2 cores still.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's no reason to rush it. But I'm very happy with my position. It looks like long term I can get to 20 dots or something pretty realistically.
Yeah, Icos is looking great for you, especially with
Because I'm already on
Oglos'.
13. Yeah. INGC and INOV look really very weak. And also because of Oglos' ability, it's going to snowball out of control because I'm going to keep getting 3 armies adjacent to their stuff because yeah, I'm just going to have the numbers advantage significantly because of these 2 disbands. Yeah, I'm just very happy. I meet Kadaria here. This is the dark purple.
Stunning.
The winning threat from across the board. Yeah, and they offer me support into INWO. We're happy to work together against Oglos, who they've been fighting for years, apparently. Yeah, it's also a new Kadaria player because the previous one had just been subbed out rather recently. So they're open to exploring new relationships and very happy to have a new friend because they've been fighting basically everyone for a long time because they've been a solo threat.
Yeah. All that coalitioning turns out to have been happening.
Yeah, and something that's interesting, there was previously, before this phase, at the end of the last fall phase, there was a draw vote. And the way the draw votes was structured is I believe 75% of powers had to vote yes for the game to end. Either 75% or 80%.
It was 80%.
Is it 80%? Okay, 80% had to vote yes. And the draw vote failed. Both Tutu and I had agreed we were going to vote no. I can actually say now, because the game's when the game ended, the votes were everyone voted yes except Kadaria, me, and Tutu, which I think makes sense. Those are probably the 3 realistic winning positions. I think Tutu and I have a near guaranteed victory, but Kadaria couldn't necessarily know that with how little they know of the north of the map. And then this spring retreats phase resolves, and there's another draw vote during the spring retreats, and it ends up passing, and I am the only person to vote down the draw. Yeah,
So
and the game draws.
right here. I think
Yes.
the next map is the final board state with all the fog gone.
Yes, exactly.
Which I don't know how much Zach has looked at yet.
I haven't analyzed it. I've briefly looked a little bit at it. Our map that we made previously was actually pretty good.
Yeah, I
One of the
noticed.
biggest things, and the reason that Meme voted to draw, I'm convinced that Meme and I would have gone on to win this map on a duo, even seeing the full map. In fact, seeing the full map, I'm more convinced. But one of the reasons that they end up choosing to vote, because originally when I saw that the vote had passed, I was very shocked, and when I learned that Meme had voted yes for it, even more shocked. Because I thought, oh, we just have a guaranteed duo win here. Even if it's going to take many years. But I learn, if you want to reveal the full map, that Meme was actually lying to me about how well they were doing in Warfuria. They were not at 9 dots in Warfuria. They were at what, 6? 1, 2, 3, 4,
Well,
5,
these 2 are
6.
also
With those 2, it's 8. Yeah. No, yeah, I guess it's 8 overall, but they're actually getting pushed back on land in Warfuria here, which I did not realize.
This big spot up here is Warfuria.
And also, I'm much more sympathetic now that I look more at this post game because grinding through those 12 Warfuria dots, grinding through salt on land here would be incredibly difficult late game, and I would need to get convoys into there to help out Meme probably. It just seems like would be really slow. I think it would have happened. It's just, do we really want to keep everyone around and play this game for 5, 6, 7 more years when 9 years of this game was 4.5 months, 5.5 months, or whatever?
Yeah.
Because we're looking at least 3 more months of game time probably.
But the map is not as big as I thought it was.
Not at all. Way smaller. Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought it was like 3 times as wide as this. Or not, sorry, not 3 times, but like at
You
least twice as wide horizontally.
you were in the most center dense area of the map, I think, as well.
I don't
So
know. There's a lot of centers in a lot of places.
you got like the smallest tiles at least.
Smallest tiles for sure. I don't know about center dense. I also am in one of the least center dense areas. I agree with Priya was talking a lot about post game about how this INLG area does not have a lot of centers like neutrals.
Yeah.
I kind of agree that the fact there's no neutral like around INLG or INWW is part of why I never end up going south here. I just
Yeah.
sit in
There's
IEGV
just
because
like a
there's like
big
nothing for me to do.
non-supply center
Exactly.
area
Like
here.
there's no, and even like INRU and IDFG, like there's just no neutrals between me, yeah, that I would want to go get or
Yeah.
inspire me to. Which I
You're
got nuked anyway, but it would have helped Priya a lot. And Oglos in comparison, if you look at where Oglos's 3 home centers are, and then you see these like 4 neutrals right to the left of them.
yeah.
That seem much closer to Oglos than to Priya, because Priya's closest home center is about yeah. And Oglos even starts with being able to walk into one in the spring, so they very easily walk into INHG in the spring, and then they see the other 2 neutrals, and that's just like a perfect opening. I don't know if they started with an army there actually, but
Also, here's
um,
where Snoo is.
that's where SNU started. Yeah.
Snoo's over here.
Yep.
Um,
You can see this massive
yeah,
highway
apparently,
that they've been
apparently
taking.
Zach
Yeah.
was the via this crazy path. Zach was the second person that they met.
That being said, they did meet 3 other powers before me. They just chose not to open press with any of them. So they
Oh,
met like 5. I was the 5th power they met, but like they just chose
oh,
not to
I
open
think
press
that
with anybody.
explains. I heard a little bit about this blue power that died. I
Yeah.
think I think that's why they died. Their power is better if they know more people,
Hmm.
like they're stronger, and they did not have enough for that. They only have met Kadaria, and they just got
Yeah,
killed.
Kadaria blitzed them, and it's kind of weird because from my understanding, Kadaria dislodged one of their units really early on and learned about their power. And then as soon as you learn about their power, it's like, okay, well, I have to kill them as soon as possible. And I believe Kadaria's win con also was to control that entire continent down there. Um, So with all
Yeah,
that considered, it's like Kadaria is just kind of incentivized. It was kind of a not the best relationship because either Kadaria is incentivized to blitz them and does and succeeds and they're just dead, or um, the power that is really strong when it meets more and more powers. That's what their ability was. They gain strength as they meet powers, like 0.5 unit strength per power that they've met. Meets at least 3 powers, which is like reasonable, and they're at 2.25 unit strength and they're really strong. Or if they're in a really strong position, they get like 5, and that's like 3.25 or whatever. There's more details and nuance to their power, but yeah, basically, more powers they meet, the stronger they are. And then they destroy the map, so that was kind of a bit of a problem.
yeah.
I also am a big fan of, I think Flair in the Diplostrats video where Flair is talking about the Imperial diplomacy evolution of the map design. They talk a lot about the concept of power triangles and like just getting a third power involved is really healthy for map design and relationships. And I really took that to heart when I was building my own variant. This idea of just like always have a third power and have third power, like have all these triangles going on. So like there's this Usniji, Praya, Eshil triangle, for example, that's interesting. And there's other triangle between Eshil, Praya, and Duglar that's also interesting. Uh, so I think just the fact that it was these 2 powers in a shared continent vying for supremacy that made it, yeah.
Yeah.
Regardless of like individual map design of like, oh, this tile should have been adjusted so that this power was a bit weaker, so it wasn't able to blitz the other power. Just this idea of having a third power in can kind of correct for a lot of inherent
I
game
also,
balance or tile problems because the players will adapt to it and do press around it.
I also think Snoo didn't really want to go down there. They
Hmm.
had this option of flying across the map, and they're like, hell yes, I am gonna do that.
Yeah.
And then they did it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what Snoo was doing for the most of the game. I know obviously they came up to me with their highway, but um, yeah, I don't know how involved they were with the Kadaria stuff. By the end of the game, they were just trying to do everything they could to have Kadaria
Yeah,
not win, which is part of why Kadaria wasn't soloing.
they kind of like
Um,
knew like everything that was going on in these little watery areas, except
yeah.
for like what's going on in Icos itself up here,
Mhm.
like any of that. Just
Yeah, it's interesting to see now, looking at the whole map, how the deep sea tiles were distributed. I just assumed that they were more scattered about and not these like explicit highways.
yeah, it is. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
This whole
That
section of
yellow
the
over
map
there.
is really interesting. I like it a lot.
Yeah, it is really interesting. I also did not have the right vision of what this was like for most of the time. I didn't realize it was like actually a connected continent in the same way. Like I knew there was a land bridge, but I thought it was like, if you look at where IDSC is, like that one island tile, I thought that was the only land bridge. I didn't realize that there was like this huge
Yeah,
connected center as well.
yeah,
And Ogos really was dominating.
yeah. They really were. They're very large.
We can also see some of the interesting artifacts of the nukes, like the Snoo took a tile and then nuked it over
Oh
on
yeah,
the East Icos
let's go
area.
take a look at what Sniji got up to after you kicked him out.
Yeah, well, I'm looking at the one in East Icos right now.
There's one up here.
Yeah, there's one up here, which I'm actually kind of surprised by because I'm pretty sure Meme was the one who asked for that, and maybe it was helpful at the time tactically, but it seems like long term it creates a lot of problems for them in terms of taking all these dots.
Yeah, I think it absolutely made it difficult. Um, then there's one down here in this
Yes, that was the one I was
neutral.
talking about. And there's this long impassable section, so it basically makes this entire part of the map like very difficult to traverse.
Yeah, and then this one. I think I think these two were
That one surprised me too.
asked by Snoo.
Yeah, I'm surprised they did ISA too. Maybe there was more fighting around that time. I guess it protects Snooze home centers, but
Yeah, and then there's also this one as well down here, which Snoo seems to have like gone past Daria's backline, which is kind of interesting.
Nuking Kadar is also way less impactful because the recoring.
Here's
Yeah, there's the Immortal Duglar.
Douglas.
Yeah, no center,
And meme,
just
you
there.
guys could have collaborated against IDJK.
Yeah, that was the plan. I asked Meme to move to ISJB.
That's
Yeah,
fascinating.
yeah. I mean, right before the game ended at that spring phase, I was getting like the full information on what that coastline had looked like and trying to coordinate fleet moves with the Meme.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it. I also have one more image here of what the game started like,
Yep.
which is quite interesting. It doesn't have all the names.
Wrong Eshil player. Yeah, I learned that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
you're not Ezio.
Originally, it was supposed to be Ezio and Meme. So sorry that I disrupted that. No, Ezio said no, but
Yeah, you were a sub. You weren't actually supposed to be there.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
and most of these players were subbed out multiple times.
yeah. Subbed out, subbed out, subbed out,
People are
sub,
subbed out.
subbed
The only
out,
people that didn't sub
subbed
out
out,
were
subbed out.
Ogos didn't sub out. I don't think Ogos didn't, Snoo didn't, Tuthu didn't, and
Oh, you said
Zasmil.
Oglos did, right? Or was
I
that
don't think Ogos ever subbed out. No,
no?
people
Okay.
are subbed out.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Ah, maybe that was it.
Kadaria subbed out if that's what you're thinking of.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's
yeah,
it,
so about half the board subbed out and half the board didn't,
it's very interesting.
which,
But
yeah.
I see that
Anko's a pre-core? I did not know that.
no,
What?
I think it was planned to be a pre-car and then they
Oh, but they
changed it.
shifted it
Yeah, cuz
down.
you see all these are X's. They're this I think this is a pre-development map.
Oh, okay, this isn't actually the final version. Okay,
Yeah. So that was
that makes.
initially going to be a car, which is very interesting. I kind of like that,
Mhm.
but
I, as someone who never went there, I did not like it.
yeah. Yeah.
It also it's a much worse pre-core for Eshel
Oh,
because you have to move north, which
Phosphor
is away
didn't
from
have a
Vestige.
core here.
Vesper has a special ability that lets them build.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so that is actually good. Like, it makes sense. Just
yeah. After the game concluded, we also did a little trait tier list. I don't know if we want to talk about that at all, but we had
Yeah.
opinions on all the different traits, and
Yeah, some of them were quite good.
some of them were quite powerful. Like Zasmiel and Raflad were the two that I thought were the strongest.
Yeah,
That we both
it
thought were the
makes sense
strongest.
why they were coalitioned.
Yeah. So the way Raflad's worked was you can't support you can't support units to hold, and you can't support other nations' units, but your units gain strength based on the number of nations that you can see cores of and have contact with of 0.5. And for each nation that you hold all the cores of, you get another 0.5. So basically, if you had seen 3 nations, or you stay in vision of 3 nations, you would be at 2.25 unit strength, which is higher than a unit being support held, which is absolutely ridiculous. And 3 is not that hard of a condition to meet, I think. And especially if you're doing well in snowballing, you could even get up to like 5, and then it seems like you're impossible to deal with. Because imagine they're sitting outside of one of your cores. If they have a unit strength of 3.25, you can't kick them out of that position. They're just going to stay there. So
Yeah.
yeah, they could easily have just like absolutely stomped the game. And then similarly, although it's very snowbally power, so again, it incentivizes people to go after them, which is also not great. But and then Zasmiel, which was Salt's power, has an incredible ability as well, which is for every wave each year, they get 1 influence point, and then additionally, they just get 1 additional point every year. And those influence points can be spent either to spend 1 point to build in any center, or spend 1 point to have an additional unit that year. And that basically means that you have 1 free extra unit above your center count every year, if nothing else. But you can also set up situations where you're like +2 for many years, and you're just waving every year, and you're gaining 3 influence per year. And then eventually you can go on these long extended campaigns where you're playing up 3 or 4 units above where you're supposed to be. And this is part of why Meme was never able to break Salt, despite having a center advantage or whatever advantage, because Salt would always have more more units than their centers, and it would create these incredibly long stalemate positions that even when other powers around them were doing well or trying to fight against them, they were still kind of an unkillable defensive beast, especially on such a strong tactical player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And they don't really have an easy way to push out either, unfortunately.
Yeah.
They seem they're really trapped. They're super corner position.
Yeah, it's yeah, quite
Wow.
literally boxed in a corner.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm pretty happy about overall how I did, given how strong of a starting position and my actual power is as Eshil, like well, obviously like being basically in the winning position, but also just I don't think of Eshil as having a very strong trait or starting position on this map. So a lot of things obviously broke my way, like Snoo backing off of me and working with me in the early game, and Tuthu deciding to go for because I think Tuthu had a similar choice to that I did, in order to like go against the person or work with them for the win. Um, and we both ended up going for a duo sort of win. Uh, so
Yeah.
those things all broke in my favor, as well as a lot of the early alliances, like Douglar and Praya not teaming up against me and going after me. Although I probably could have survived that given how low impact Icos was to me. Um, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a really fun variant. I'm really happy that I was invited to it. I really love the traits concept, and just all these powers having different abilities. And obviously, it's really fun in a fog of war context. Um, and the fun thing too is, I mean, this is the only time the map will be played, so
Yeah.
you don't have to necessarily worry about balance, because the whole novelty of playing around with incomplete information and new powers, it's all just fun stuff, even if it's not being designed to be the most balanced, coherent, fair, um, variance that there is.
Yeah. I absolutely see the appeal of Fog of War games. They seem very cool. I want to play in
Yeah.
one eventually. Especially
Mhm.
like we go back here all the way.
Yeah, I was telling right before we started recording how much I love just like how the starting maps look. They're so pretty.
Yeah.
Um,
All the way back here. These
yeah, that's all you
it's
see.
like you got to think like what do you even want to do here? There's so much. It's just fun to explore. I think that's the best part
Yeah,
about it.
like the first 2-year exploration phase before all the wars start.
And then like it gets interesting here because then you have to do like weird diplomacy stuff out very much knowledge. It's
Yeah, very
cool.
little information.
It's cool.
And if I hadn't gotten a lot of information from Snoo and Tuthu throughout the game about the board, I would have like very little idea of what was going on.
Yeah.
Because also people, especially as press was starting to die over time, and people in general just don't press about stuff that's not really relevant to them. So it's not like, even after I had a channel with Flala, for example, it's not like Flala is telling me anything about the board. And I'm not really, I tend to be very reciprocal in the way I do press. So if someone's friendly to me, I'm friendly to them. If someone shares information with me, I share information with them. I tried to initiate some of the information sharing, but they didn't seem very interested. So I wasn't going to tell them everything about the world that I knew.
Yeah.
The other thing that was really fun to notice was like people who were going for these like dedicated lies. So I tend to go, just in general, my style, I tend to be very truthful in alliance play, but also just in general, like I just tell the truth to people I meet, especially about the fog was kind of the way I was going to approach it because I've never played a Fog of War game before. I don't know how to lie about this stuff and not just immediately get caught for it. I don't even know what's necessarily good to lie about.
Yeah.
But seeing Snoo do the exact opposite and go like absolutely crazy with like all the different stories they were telling people was very fun.
Yeah. But my home is up here. I'm a top
Yeah,
50.
yeah,
Dude,
exactly.
I believed that. I very much
I believe
believed.
it too, yeah. We see the part of the way through when I make the map for Snoo. If you want to go to that, I have this little purple. Yeah, this is what I thought the map was like.
Really, really shitty rendition, but
And it wasn't. I didn't really have confirmation until I realized that the map literally ends to the west of me.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just scribbled on my phone. General areas.
And then over here with my map, I'm quite happy with how accurate things were.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
again, this is when we're getting a lot of East Icos information from Duglar and Bosper and stuff like that. So that's when I actually probably could have placed even more accurately that Duglar and Bosper were like right north on the east side of East Icos. Because a lot of the stuff I was getting like literal like here's each sea tile or like so I
Yeah.
knew like they were in
I
a straight line from my northern centers basically.
I should have drawn the continents on this.
Hmm.
I didn't know that
I
there's this continent or this continent at all.
I knew Kadaria had a continent and I knew Flala had a continent, so I knew that yeah, by the end of the game at least, I knew
Yeah.
that those two continents existed.
Lacaire
I didn't
and
know.
Haiku.
Yeah, if you look at Locataire, I didn't know it was divided into these like three different, I guess two different islands because the other ones are Peria. But I didn't realize it was divided into these two islands. I just knew that there was a continent
Yeah,
there.
it's not very big, is it?
No, it's a very
One,
small continent.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Six.
It's a six supply center continent. That's the smallest one, isn't
And
it?
it's not shared by any powers, right? It's just
It's
just Flala.
just Flala and Bosper.
Oh, Bosper started there. Okay,
Bosper was
interesting.
everywhere. I think they're the
Yeah, Bosper was
most
interesting.
true
The true
colonial.
colonial. Yeah, I thought the other colonials would also have split starts. But
I think
Bosper starts with
I think
4 as well.
you and them are the true like actual start with two different maps, which I think is really cool. That's a cool way to
Yeah,
do
that's
fog of
interesting.
war.
Yeah, I just thought that Tuthu would also be a true colonial, I think, because of my traits and stuff. That's, obviously it started a colony. And I thought, okay, well, there's Bosper and Tuthu who are colonials and they're on Warfuria and they're humans. And then so it was Esmil must also be. And yeah.
Yeah, I think the fact that you only had one unit on each of your things made it even more interesting. It's like,
People thought I was a colonial early on. Probably thought I was a colonial.
I mean, you're kind of. Like, I mean, you are a colony, so
Yeah.
you're two colonies. So you're just not
Yeah, I
the.
remember saying that I was a regional, and I wanted to push this, like, because I wanted Praya and Duglar to think I was on the same strength as them in the continent. Clearly, I didn't realize also that Duglar had this, it was so more of an East Icos power until the sub out happened and the new Duglar talked to me about how they were actually an East Icos power, and I don't know why the previous person had said that all these things that were not true. Because I thought like Duglar had two more cores like right under where IDGK is, but no, they did not.
Yeah.
Oh, they also must have changed the starting map a lot because they gave them an army there, Duglar.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
It's interesting. This is a cool map.
Yeah, it's a cool map. It was a very fun game. Just wanted to talk over experience with it.
Yeah. I think that's everything, yeah?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Cool. Well, thanks for watching. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.